Vernon Road.
Should I get one of those? What's that? You do print that out or?
What's that?
Yeah.
I printed the.
Oh, okay.
More like an industrial building.
I haven't quite gotten comfortable enough to print things on Reverend Woodbury.
Oh, really?
No, we're having to break everything.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was supposed to be made of the same material as
All right, yeah, this feels right.
don't we need?
Right? Just like
You
your
still
phone.
see the suit right now.
I know.
We're not gonna need these.
Every
Yeah, I know. It's
once in a while.
Need the top and the bottom.
Oh, good.
He's still on ESPN. He's still on ESPN. I'll go over here.
Had that.
All right. Yeah, because mine's weird.
Isn't throwing it out here.
Right.
Warmed up in here quick too.
It's all day teaching.
1 degree.
If you do.
Good?
I haven't seen Teresa in a while.
Y'all good? Y'all good? How are you?
Something to take the edge off.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, what do you got in there?
Local latte. Amazing.
You ready?
No
Giving blood.
There you go.
That's unusual.
At 7 o'clock, let's go. We'll call the August 17, 2021 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Dave, can you please call the roll, or Mary Ellen, please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Gork,
Commissioner Glorick here.
Commissioner Volpe,
Commissioner Volpe is here.
Commissioner Wolowski,
Commissioner Wolowski here.
Commissioner Locks,
Commissioner Locks is here.
Alternate Commissioner Albanese,
And Commissioner Albanese is here.
Alternate Commissioner Coles,
Alternate Commissioner Coles is present.
Alternate Commissioner Coviello, Alternate Commissioner Savocal, Commissioner Santago,
Santiago's here.
Vice Chair Salka,
Commissioner Selka here.
and Chair Hammersley.
Hammersley's here. I did hear from Joe Coviello. He won't be in attendance. I did not hear from Mr. Silvacol. However, I suspect that he won't be here tonight, but we do have a quorum. So if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We can all remain standing for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Before I go to item number 6 on the agenda, I'm just going to take a brief moment of personal privilege to introduce everybody to our new town planner. It's her second day on the job. Mary Ellen Edwards is sitting down there with the blue shirt. She took over for the other guy who used to sit there. He's not there anymore. We don't even remember what his name is. But Mary Ellen, you want to say anything, or you? Planners aren't typically talkative people, but I guess. But go ahead. Just give us a little background on yourself. Just tell us where you came from. Maybe.
I came from the town of Woodbury. I've been there for almost 5 years now. Majority of my I have a state background, worked for the state of Florida. I have experience working for consulting firms, and I've also worked for Eversource. So I kind of have a very well-rounded background, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody. So
Yeah, thank you.
guys.
Thanks. Likewise too.
Walk into the mics because she's
Yeah.
so far.
Okay. Can we get an approval for the minutes of the meeting on July 20th, 2021, please?
Mr. Chair, make a motion, we approve the minutes from the July 20th meeting.
I have a motion for Commissioner Salk. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Locks with a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving into item number 7, public hearings, item 7A, Wesley Code Special Permit Application to construct a garage, which will be in excess of 3 spaces, property located at 131, AKA 137 Mount Vernon Road in our 2025 zone, SPU 651. This is continued from July 20th. My understanding is the applicant has requested a tabling of this matter. They have some wetlands issues, I think, to work out. Is that
Correct, Mr.
accurate,
Chair.
Dave? Yes? Okay. So do we need to move to table it, or we can just move along?
I can do a voice vote.
Yeah. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we table item SPU 651.
Salka made a motion. Is there a second? To
Second.
Commissioner Wolowski with a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7B, Amanda and Michael Dolphinius. I probably mispronounced that last name, but special permit application for a garage in excess of 3 spaces, property located at 361 Pratt Street in an R40 zone, SPU 654. Is the applicant present? If you could just come up and present your, let us know what you want to do. I don't know if you have a presentation or any of that kind of stuff. I think there's stuff that you did submit to us, but go ahead.
Thank you very much. Mike Dauphiné, 361 Pratt Street. I do have some additional photographs if anyone wants to see pictures of the property or the surrounding area around, so I can pass those down.
You just have to keep them for the record if that's okay.
Okay. Do you want to see them now? I have extra ones that aren't in the submittal.
Well, it's up to you, but we just have to log them in.
That's fine.
Okay. Yep, you can go ahead.
I didn't know that there was so many people, so I only have 7 copies. I also have a copy of a letter from all of our neighbors who endorse our.
If you just give that to Dave down there, just to save you on your walking time, and he can pass it down and people can grab it.
So the
Thank
nature
you.
of our application is we're requesting an additional garage bay. We have 2 bays on our main house. Last year, we built a large barn structure in our backyard to support our lawnmower, snowblower, a boat, and so that counted as a garage space. We have our growing family, and we, despite the size of our house, only have 3 bedrooms. My parents are going to be traveling, and they will be coming to visit us and staying for longer periods. My mother-in-law lives in Vermont. We don't have a guest room, so we'd like to take the finished space that is above our existing garage and convert that to livable space, which will be part of a building application. But in order to use the full space and to have room for cars, we'd like to add the additional bay, and that's the nature of our application.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Do you have like a site plan on where this is sitting on the property?
Yep.
I didn't see that.
It should be in the
this not
plan map layout, but you can, if you see, I have a map. Oh, that one doesn't have it on it. On the electronic version that I checked today, it was on there. It will be directly behind the current garage structure, going straight back into our property. It will not encroach on any of the offset limits. It will be more than 25 feet away from our well. And it will not introduce any drain water or storm water onto our neighbor's property, which were the concerns from the town engineer.
And I saw those comments from the town engineer. I don't think we have any. Do we have somebody who can talk to whether those are satisfactorily resolved? Satisfactorily?
I have an email from the, not from Jim, but from his assistant, because Jim, that was me. Yep, okay, so,
Let's go right to the source,
yeah,
Michael,
great.
you know?
Answer it for me.
Yes, you've addressed all of our concerns, and
Can you get closer to Mike for us, please?
Sure. Yes, he's addressed all of our concerns, and all the responses he's provided are satisfactory.
Okay, so you're all set. Okay.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add, Michael, before we open it up for questions?
I don't believe so.
No, you're all set. Any questions from members of the commission to the applicant on this?
May we have a moment just to review the materials?
Sure. Mr. Gore, go ahead.
What is the new roof line? Is it going to be the same height as the house, or is it a little lower? Same exact height?
It'll match the main house. The current garage is slightly lower, but the new one will match the existing height. Actually, it will be about 2 feet lower because we have our attic vent, which will be exposed.
Anything else, Jeff?
I had something and I forgot what it was. So no. Basically, the section is at a mudroom in between the garage now, currently, and
Currently a mudroom and a finished bathroom.
all right. So that's expanded the same height as the garage is going to be.
Yeah, so the area above it is currently an attic space, which has our HVAC system. So that area needs to be maintained. And in order to meet the aesthetics of raising where the garage is, I decided raising that area as well would make it more aesthetically pleasing. Otherwise, you'd have a 10-foot gap in the middle of the structure.
Okay. And that whole that new area you're proposing is just going to be living space.
Yep. So there'll be 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and then an open space. I also work from home now, which I didn't before. And before my daughter turned 10, I had an office and I lost that. I didn't win that one. So I plan to, use it as a working space as well.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Volpe?
I was first. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you were.
You had mentioned a barn on the property. Is that the structure that's included in the background of these photos right here? Or
Yeah, to the right side there, it's a 15 or 14 by 30 foot garage structure. So I have an acre and a half of land, a very long driveway. So I have some equipment to maintain the property. And I'm also an amateur wood worker, and I'm building a boat in that area. So
Cool.
that was the reason for the barn addition.
very interesting. Thank you. That's it.
Those are Commissioner Coles.
Thank you. Hi. So I'm just trying to spatially get a handle of this. So it looks like, and I'm looking at the GIS and I'm trying to compare it to your proposed plans. So it looks like the new building is going to go to the south side of the entire structure.
It's actually the east side, but yeah.
So towards 367.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at the aerial photograph. So the purpose of the line of questioning is, so if it's to the, yeah, I do. So it's to the rear of the, okay, I
Correct.
see.
It's moving towards the rear of the property, not towards not towards 367 Pratt Street.
Okay.
That offset will remain.
So the driveway then kind of swings around and into it, which I can't really see from my photograph.
The driveway goes straight back along the property line, and then it is probably 30 feet wide from the garage all the way to about 5 feet before the property line. And then from the property line, from the driveway to the property line, there's about 5 feet of crushed gravel.
So you take a left into the garage.
Into the garage, yep.
Excellent. So then, the point of this whole question is the extra roof space, rain leaders and things like that. Is there any sort of diversion, or where do you plan on having that that rainwater or any sort of runoff from the roof go? Because it's going to be excessive. If it's going to go towards your neighbor's land, I'm just a little concerned about that. We just want to make sure that we're not impeding on that.
That was actually one of the engineer's questions as well.
Right.
So we have gutters on our existing garage and on all the roof lines. So the front gutter system is drained to the front of the house and goes out into the front yard of our property, and the back will go into where the patio area is. So none of them will dispense even more than 20 feet from the property line.
Sounds good to me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Those I can.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant from members of the commission? Anything to add, Michael, before we open it up to the folks behind you? No? Okay. So we'll open up to any member of the public who'd like to speak in favor of this application. If they can come forward at this time, give us their name and address and share your thoughts with us. Seeing none, is there any member of the public who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Again, come forward and state your name and address for us, please. Seeing none. Michael, before I close the public hearing, I give you one more chance to say whatever you want. You don't have to. You just wave me off. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
One more
sorry,
question,
Jeff
Mr.
Gord.
Chair.
Yep.
Are these entered into the record? Did we receive these, or the letters of support, or
I think they're entered into the record.
do they have a copy of that on there? Okay.
We can read them in, or they're part, you can just say they're in support, nothing against, and then we'll put them in the record itself.
Yeah, we
Once
just received
we
them.
receive them, we'll have the secretary.
Okay. I just wanted to know if we were. It was made. Yeah, officially made aware.
They're not in the
Positive.
online documents
Okay.
yet. We just received the last one today, so those are new.
Michael, while I have you up there, I'm just going to reiterate, ask you to affirm that you're not going to use this for a business purpose.
Correct.
You did submit an affidavit to that effect. I just want to make sure that there's no change to that affidavit.
Correct.
Okay. And Dave, this puts it about 329, am I reading that correctly? 329 feet over the allowed limit?
Yeah, it should be in the memo there.
Right. 312 square feet. Okay. Any reason to keep this public hearing open?
Nope.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing and stick around. We'll act on it probably later on. So thanks, Michael. Moving on to item 7C. Armis Coma home occupation application to use a premise as a phone service for residential garage Door Servicing Company and to park van in driveway. All material will be stored elsewhere or in van. Property located at a duplex at 55 Logo Drive in an I-2 zone, HO 79.
Good evening. Louis Martach on behalf of the applicant. I'm with the law
Nice
firm
to see you tonight.
Pacho and Oliveira, 191 Main Street, Southington, Connecticut. My clients are here as well. Very briefly, as you correctly pointed out, this is a home application or home occupation application. My client is seeking to essentially use her home to receive calls and schedule appointments. The couple that I represent own a garage door repair and installation business. So rather than rent an office space for the sole purpose of taking telephone calls, they're hopeful that this commission will grant their application, allow the office to be used for that purpose within their home. Secondarily, we are seeking the permission to park one of the two vehicles owned by the company. It's a van that would be parked in the driveway at the premises. The property itself is in an I-2 zone. I believe that pursuant to the regulations, this would be properly suited for such a use and such an application, including Section 8 and 12 of the regs regarding parking as well as special use permits. And finally, as is pointed out in the application, my clients are not seeking to store their materials on site. They're not seeking to perform any work on site. Again, it'll be used essentially as a home office, as many people in town do. All of the equipment and inventory will be stored off-site. It is stored off-site in a different facility.
Okay. You all set? Anything else to add?
Nothing
Lou, or
further.
you all set? Okay. I just have a question. And this may be more for Dave than for you, Lou, but is there a budding residential zone to this property at all? Or is it surrounded by industrial zone?
It's an interesting parcel, and Dave can answer better, but the answer is no, it's an IA, but there are residential dwellings scattered throughout this area, in particular around this street. One of the neighbors, I believe, is already in the record from a neighbor, Cheryl Donovan, a trustee of the property, has already submitted a letter in favor or not objecting to this application, and that would be the neighbor directly behind my client.
Okay. Okay. Any questions for the applicant from members of the commission? Commissioner Santago.
Hi, Attorney Black, yep. So, as you know, home occupation comes with a pretty wide latitude in terms of what you could do in your own house.
Of course.
Provided nobody really knows you're there. If I could overgeneralize what it says.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So the van, you got signage on the van, or is it an undescript white van?
No, it is a,
Reason why I ask is that could be constituted as signage.
I'm aware of that. It's a marked van. It has the company name on the side.
Because you don't see that. I don't know if that's problematic necessarily, because normally when we have home occupation, we say no signage, no nothing. You kind of have to be there anonymously and you go about your business. But by virtue of having a van, if it's an undescript van, nobody knows you're there. However, a van with a nice sign on it suddenly becomes a sign.
Understandable, I should say, and it should point out to the commission, I sat on the committee that drafted the regulations. I'm well aware of the regulations. I assisted in drafting them.
Yeah.
All I could say is that sometimes a van is just a van. I mean, we have dealt with these issues repeatedly in the past on many different levels of government. In this case, it's a company vehicle, no different than many of the vehicles that don't use their home for a home office.
Right, and therein lies the difference, I think.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It should be pointed out that the larger of the vehicles, the truck, is not signed, is not marked, and nor does it have any signs. I just think it's much more intrusive to have a large vehicle in a driveway than it is to have a van. So we would respectfully submit that it would be treated as a company car, no different than a Home Depot car or any of the other ones. I can assure you it's not intended to be, even though it's unintended consequence, it's not intended to be a sign. It's a vehicle that's used daily, 6 days a week for the purpose of business.
Gotcha. All right.
All set?
Yeah.
Any other member of the commission? Commissioner Volpe?
Yeah, thank you. Just a point of clarification too, there's not going to be any appointments or people like foot traffic, pedestrian traffic coming to the business, is
Oh,
that
goodness,
correct?
no, not at all. Not at all. It's a purely internet and telephone driven business. All services done at the customer's home. 99% of the business is residential in nature. So for example, if you were to have an issue with your garage door, you might call this company. They would arrive and either the van, more likely than not, or if it's a big install, the truck, for the purpose of addressing and then correcting whatever garage door issues there are. There would never, ever be a customer entering the home, coming to the home, anything like that. There's no showroom, showcase, none of that. Just a telephone.
Thank you very much.
You all set?
Yeah.
Any other questions from members of the commission on this application? Seeing none. Lou, anything to add before we open it up to the fine folks behind you?
No, thank you for your time.
Okay. You get one more shot, you know how it works.
That's
So at this time, anyone who would like to testify in favor of this application, if they could step to the podium and just introduce themselves to us?
I just have a question, actually.
Okay.
I'm
Could
Pamela
you,
DiPaolo.
before you start, could you just give us your name and your address, just so we can get it on the
Yes,
record? over
Pamela
here?
J. DiPaolo, 54 Delahunty Drive,
Okay, Pamela, go
president
ahead.
of DiPaolo Furniture. My question would be, I'm not opposed or in favor, but I'd like to know, being a business owner for many, many years, will there be FedEx trucks, Amazon trucks, UPS and so forth coming and going from the property? I would certainly want to ask that question. Thank you.
I think that's a great question. Thanks for raising it. At the end, I'll let you answer these questions, but, okay, thanks, Pamela. Anyone else from the audience who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Or in opposition to the application? Seeing none. Lou, I have a question for you. A constituent of mine raised this question and asked if there was going to be any FedEx trucks or UPS trucks or anything of that variety arriving at that household.
And the answer is no, with the exception of the Amazon orders, their children place would appear to be on a daily basis, according to my client. There would not be. All of the equipment that's used in the industry are large in nature: garage door panels, garage door openers, rods, steel. Nothing is delivered by a courier or any of that manner. Nor can't speak. I apologize. Nor is any inventory stored on site. So if it were to be delivered by such a nature, which it isn't, it would be delivered to the off-site storage facility.
Okay, thanks for that response. Any other questions from members of the commission? Anything else from members of the public before we close? Are you ready? You have anything else to add, Lou? Or is there any reason to keep this public hearing open? Dave, this is all set?
As long as we didn't hear anyone that was against it. I don't know if we got that far into it before.
I did ask for anyone in opposition, and we didn't see anybody, so.
Yep. Then
We're all
no
set?
other reason. Yep.
Thank you for your
All
consideration.
right, thank you. So we'll close the public hearing on that one. Moving on to item 7C. D, sorry. Lovely Development, Inc., special permit application to establish an open space preservation subdivision property located at 1268 West Street, owned by CB West LLC et al. In an R40 zone, SPU 2. Sed Bravino.
Mr. Chair, I'd like
Oh,
to
I'm sorry. Yep.
recuse myself for this application.
Thanks, Jeff. Commissioner Gorka is going to be recused, and we'll sit Commissioner Albanese in your place. Fire away, Seb.
And Seb, would you please speak into the microphone when you start talking, please?
Could somebody, there you go. Thanks, Mark.
Mark Nielsen.
I was playing rock, paper, scissors with Felix.
There you go.
Thank you.
I have a long night tonight, Sev.
I was trying to blow it up, but it got too big, so I guess we have to live with the size that's indicated.
All right. So you can slide it.
I was gonna have it.
I don't have that color.
Can go back to the percentage.
In
Yeah.
In the GIS.
How small do you want?
no, that's part of his proposal.
Oh.
It takes a second to catch up.
Oh,
We just have.
25?
Yeah, maybe 25 will fit probably. Yeah, that's a lot better.
You ready? No?
Good
You
evening,
ready?
Mr. Chairman, Commission members, Seth Bovino, planner with Gratz & Jones. Can you hear me?
Yep, we're good.
Thank you.
Okay. Seth Bovino, planner with Gratz & Jones, represented the applicant. The property in question is street address 1268 West Street. However, most of the property is located north of Churchill Street. For orientation purpose, this is Churchill Street on the south side. West Street is to the east over here. And the property spans from West Street all the way west, probably 3,300 feet linear distance. It's labeled Assessor's Map number 143, parcel 14. The land area is 49.14 acres, zoned R40. It is served by public water and SEP systems. The soils in this area are very sandy. They're very good for SEP systems. The land slopes east to west to a wetland area. The land slopes from east to west in this direction. There's a wetland area here off the screen. The remaining of the property, which is to the west of the wetland, is about 8 acres and it slopes west to the wetlands easterly. The land cover is open fields and wooded areas. The open fields are located in this area here. Along the property line is a wooded area, north and south, and this is all wooded, and it's wooded on the other side of the wetland. The application was made in accordance with Section 3-07.3 A and B in compliance with the special permit requirements. A 500-foot radius map with names and addresses was provided. Property owners were notified. Proof of mailing was provided to staff. Property is surrounded by residential zone land. It's all R40 zone. To the north lies a large parcel undeveloped. This parcel here is undeveloped. It covers pretty much the entire length of our property. It's about 1,770 feet. And this property also abuts 270 feet on West Street. Our property abuts 270 feet on West Street. One option to develop this property is to go under the standard subdivision, which is R40 regulations, 150-foot frontage, 40,000 square feet, which would yield 33 lots based on our preliminary layout, and we will provide 3.988 acres of open space, 3.98 acres. Under the regulations, actually 1.2 acres of open space needs to be provided, but we will provide 3.98 acres. The other option is to design an open space subdivision concept for this development, which will provide 17.76 acres. So we go from 3.98 to 17.76 acres of open space, which is 40% of the property. This open space will be consistent of upland and wetland area. So it's not all wetlands. We have upland area on either side, and the wetlands is in the middle, which provides a nice habitat for wildlife and also wildlife corridor through that area. This proposal will have a much smaller impact and a smaller carbon footprint. Section 3-07.3 B1 requires a written statement describing the purposes to be accomplished by an open space subdivision. This layout accomplishes most of the items on the list. Number one, substantial amount to be dedicated to open space. We have 17.76 acres. The location of the open space is such that will allow for substantial buffers between development. This will allow buffers to the south where there's existing residential to the west and to the east. Number 3, the open space location will allow no impact to the wetlands and buffer. We don't need to do any impact to the wetlands or the buffer under the open space subdivision. We'll be operating all outside those parameters. The design provides the most appropriate use of the land. Number 5, a shorter roadway network, about 600 feet less of roadway to be built and to be maintained by the town. And 6, we are able to eliminate wetlands crossing and reduce the number of rear lots. We might have one rear lot. It's located in this area right here. And the reason I call it a rear lot, because the frontage is not 110 feet or 100 as required to qualify for a front lot. But once we go to the real subdivision, we may be able to modify this to allow it to be a front lot. It's not like a rear lot, which we have 200-300 feet of access driveway. You won't be able to tell the difference between a front lot and a rear lot when you see this home constructed there. It'll be a short driveway. In accordance with Section 3-07.3E, the Commission shall find that the proposal accomplishes 2 or more of the purposes set forth in Section 3-07.2, which is the list provided in the list I just described. We believe we met the purpose. Tonight's Commission decision is to allow an open space subdivision versus a conventional subdivision. That's what we're here in front of you tonight. Our layout placed the proposed road in such a way to provide more land area for the lots abutting the existing homes on the south side of our property. Right here, there's existing R40 zone development. These lots, some of these lots are 300 feet deep. Most of these lots are more than the minimum requirement for this subdivision. I just want the Commission to know that the setback requirements for the open space subdivision, the front and the rear setbacks are the same. The requirements are the same. So in our 40 zone, you have 50-foot setback and 25-foot rear yards, and that's what we have in an open space subdivision. Also, we are providing a 50-foot stub for future access to the north. This land area to the north is developable land, again, sandy soil, and this property connects to an existing development to the north. So shortly after this is completed, most likely this will be extended and there'll be a connection there. Under the open space scenario, we are not proposing to build the road from Brothers Way to Lady Slipper. Brothers Way is at this location. Lady Slipper is somewhere here. There's about 600 foot of distance. We're not proposing to construct this area here as roadway. The only roadway we're constructing is what you see within our boundaries right there. This will preserve the area character and reduces the possibility of speeding in the area. If we build this road, it's an open area from Churchill Street all the way to the end of the road. So most likely will be speeding occurring there. By not doing this, we are forcing people to kind of stop here and take a left turn to go around to back to Churchill Street. There will be less roadway to build and maintain. Smaller yards in this development will require less grass cutting, less chemicals to be applied to the yards, smaller driveways. All this leads to a smaller carbon footprint, as mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, and less energy to be used now and in the future. Most of the homes face in a southerly direction for possible solar installation. As you can see, these lots go north-south, so the homes will be oriented east-west direction. So the back of these will have the roof area can take advantage of the exposure for solar installation, and the homes on the north side will have the front of the house that will allow for the same use. If the commission finds that our proposal is appropriate for this location, our next step would be to apply for the actual subdivision, which will have to be reviewed again and approved by this board. At this point, if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Okay, thanks, Ev. Any questions from members of the commission?
Yes, how much of a buffer?
Members of the commission right now, okay. Commissioner Santago.
You could take my place in a couple of years when I run, no problem. So, Sev, just help me with my math. So, with an currently you're given a 17.6 acres versus 3.9, right?
Yes.
And the difference between the houses is what compared to what? How many for regular subdivision? How many for this?
33 for regular subdivision, 36 for this.
So,
And it's not a set number. Again, this is a preliminary layout.
General, because you have a site plan, I get it, but just
work out the details.
just between you and me, there's nobody here. So you get 3 additional lots and the town gets an additional 14 acres.
This is the issue that we talked about so long ago. If you allow the developer to have some flexibility,
Yeah.
there's ways to preserve open space
Right.
without buying it, without doing anything. So
Yeah, right.
here it is, 40% of land area, 35 to 40% would be preserved.
Yeah. So I couldn't tell because in your renderings, I don't know if it's there because it's tough to see. Did you do in here what it would look like in a regular subdivision versus
Yes.
what you have? So that is in there.
Yeah, the other layout.
It's just hard to see because it's to the left, right? It's to the left of where the
other layout
space is.
We submitted 2 layouts.
Required to.
So to the left there of where the wetlands is, that's the,
Yeah, here's the conventional layout.
okay.
Well, I didn't touch this thing. And so here's the wetland, and that's where the open space would be, with some of upland on either side, a little bit of upland on either side.
Yeah.
And this west side will be developed into front and rear lots. And then the roadway will start here next to the wetland and loop into this cul-de-sac and then to stop.
Okay, so you changed the roadway. Okay. The outside of the 3 houses, you changed the layout in the roadway.
Yes,
Going in. Is that-
a different approach.
Different approach that
This
way.
is where the flexibility comes in, that for the smaller lots, we could come in at this location and we go up and then a short cul-de-sac, we generate the same number of lots or more, but we preserve all this.
Gotcha. Okay. What size lots abut this property? Like on Churchill, like those houses at the bottom there, what size lots are those?
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay. Lot number 24, which is the first lot over here by the cul-de-sac, the lot is 49,199. That's what we propose in there, which is more than the 40 zone. The next lot is 30,726. The next lot is 30,981. And 31,951, 32,920, 44,734, 35,948, 31,636, 31,197, 32,242. And the first lot coming in from here on the right is 40,000 square feet, right next to the R40 zone. So most of these lots will be 3/4 acres. Some of them will be an acre or more, and this one will be the R40 zone standard.
So in general, what you're proposing is your lots are as or bigger than the abutting lots, or are they smaller?
not
They're
bigger.
smaller, right?
Not bigger, not
So they're
bigger.
smaller, right?
That's what the regulation.
No, I understand that. I'm just wondering what's bordering
These
them.
lots will be smaller than the R40 zone developed, other than few that I just mentioned, like one here, one at the corner here, and one in between.
Okay.
Those are larger or equal to. The other ones are like 3/4 acres.
Gotcha. So you're having smaller lots than what's abutting you. That's the only question per what you have. So
Yes.
that's what you're doing. So basically, you're getting a smaller lot to get more houses, right?
Yes,
Basically,
that's the idea, yes.
that's the general thing. All right, I'm good for now, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks. Any other members of the commission have any questions? Commissioner Wolowski.
My question would be in terms of the open space, is any of that
17.6 acres usable, or is it, for
Yes.
hiking or whatever, or is it just going to be there
Right now,
landlocked?
Right now, it's forested land that has all this frontage from here all the way to here. And it is usable for whatever purpose the town wants to use it for. Right now, it's forested land, nobody's using it. And it will be abutting all these homes there on the south side here, Lady Slipper Lane, all the way down to the west cul-de-sac here.
But
it
without
is
some kind of
upland area.
town involvement, it's just woods.
It's woods.
Okay.
Cedars, maples, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Any other members of the commission? Commissioner Albanese.
So for the conventional layout, subdivision layout, were there proposed impacts to the wetlands and buffers, the upland review area?
We are closer here. We would have a detention area built right about this wetland right here. We have a home built close to the wetland right here. These homes will be closer to the wetlands, yes.
And the septic systems would be moved to a different part of the lot, or would they be okay?
The land slopes east to west, so the septic system will be in the back of these homes. So most likely they'll be close to the 50-foot upland review area.
Right, okay. And just to make a point of correction, sometimes sandy soils are very good for septics, but just so I'm very familiar with septic systems, sometimes too rapid percolation is not good. So I'm assuming whoever does the engineering for that and has the Department of Health, involved in the soil evaluation, that they'll make the right determination if there's a need for soil amendments, because sometimes too rapid soil is not good enough. You know, it's great that they're sandy, but if they're more, a different material. I just wanted to make a point of clarification. What about traffic in the area? I mean, how is that getting handled?
Traffic.
Yeah. Like, what's the
Trip
proposed
generation for homes, for residential homes, are about 11 trips per day.
for each, for,
11 trips per home per day.
right?
Total. So
11
you're looking
trips
at
per home per day.
333 trips for conventional versus for 36, be 360 plus another few. So that's what the trips per day will be.
So how many homes would be coming out of that? I didn't do the math. You can tell me the final number. What's the final number per day coming out of that? That new,
33 homes on a conventional.
Right,
Which would be 333 trips. And then 36 homes if we get to that point.
Right, okay.
Times 11, you're about 360 plus another 371, 373 trips per day versus
That's a lot more
333.
traffic on,
40,
coming out.
40 trips per the total day for an 8-hour period.
40 trips?
40 trip additional
Right.
compared to the conventional.
Okay,
So in an 8-hour period, it would be 5 additional trips per hour.
okay,
And that's if you just do an 8-hour computation.
okay. And just one last question. I just wanted to know what the account was, but the last question I have is, what was the prior use of this property? Describe what the existing use is. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this property. What was this property used for in the past
There's a
historically?
farmhouse up here on West Street. So over the years, this has been in the family for generations. It was used for a farm and then it was abandoned. It was fields over here, hay fields. I don't know what the rest of the use was. Attorney Krezel is here representing the family. He can give you a good history of the property if you want to hear that.
So it was farmed. You're saying it was farmed?
Yes, it was a farm.
Okay.
Right now, it's inactive.
All right. Thank you very much.
You okay? You all set, Teresa?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Any other members of the commission? Commissioner Coles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Seb. So you said that the topography slopes from east to west, with the wetland kind of in the middle of the two spaces, depending on what plan we're looking at. I guess my question is, if in 100-year rain events or heavy rain events, the flow or the runoff from that wetland area downgrade, where we're going to look at those properties, and it's in both examples we have houses over there, right? No. Stop me before I keep going, because I think you see where I'm going with this question.
In both examples, what?
So in both examples, I believe that there's houses that are going to be along that that depression where the wetland is.
No, on
So my
the
question
open
is,
space- on
are
the
we going to
open
see runoff from that wetland into the backs of the
Yes, in
houses,
both-
which
in
might
both-
affect the septic systems?
Both examples, the runoff will go toward the wetlands. We have to put it where the water is. But the detention area will be upgrading from the wetland, and in the standard subdivision will be closer to the wetlands. On the open space subdivision, we have additional room that we can play with, which we place a detention area outside of the buffer most likely. So it'll be further away. But eventually the runoff will end up into that stream that's over here in the low point. But we have to comply with ZARA, as you know. There's no additional increase in runoff based on the regulations.
Runoff from the development
from our property
into the wetland.
Into the wetlands.
But we're not concerned about heavy rain events from the wetlands back towards the development.
There will not be any runoff, additional runoff into the wetlands than it's there today. Into the neighboring brook, which is next to the other development here. The water runs north to south, this direction.
And so, yeah, thank you, Mark.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mark Lovely, President of Lovely Development with offices at 710 Main Street, Plantsville. I think Commissioner Coles was asking, is there going to be any homes over in this area if we do go with the open space subdivision? This whole section of road will not be built through. There'll be no homes over in this area. This all becomes open space. Seb, can you go back to the original? I'm going to have him go back to that.
Yeah, actually, that wasn't necessarily my question. My question was, I guess is where the wetland is, and I don't have a topographical, I don't see the contours there, but how deep is the contours to the wetland from the grade of where the houses are going to be?
From over in here to the bottom of the wetlands, where this land does slope down this way. So you're looking at from where the road is way up here and the cul-de-sac will be here, there's probably about a difference of a 6 foot to 8 foot drop from where the homes are and the basements are to the wetlands, which that will have a buffer zone around it and then nothing will be built on. And then this over in this area in the open space subdivision concept, there's no homes being built over in this area at all, which is down gradient into that wetland.
That's where I was going with my question. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That satisfies my curiosity.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner
That's what I
Salka.
was trying to do, but.
Mark, or Seb, just a question to clarify again. Those homes, item lot number 31, 32, 33, and 32 and 33 are not going to be built on?
Over in here, what happens is if you look, this is the open space subdivision. I had Seb bring this up so it's in a 10% scale so we can see the amount of open space. The 17.5 acres plus that'll stay is open space if we do go the open space subdivision. These lots over in here are all larger, which we've talked to some of the neighbors and we've talked to Dave LaValle today. We do plan on leaving about a 40 to 50 foot buffer zone along the back of these, all treed with conservation so nobody can ever clear that. These lots all up in here, if you notice, we did make them deeper that back up to these so we could leave that buffer zone in there and not have it restricted.
Okay.
Thought about that already.
And this property is pretty much wooded right now. What about the top? I guess that's north.
Up in here. North is up in this section up here.
Right. Will all the tree line be left there? Because you're talking about building phase 2, if you will. Where are the trees going to be left?
Basically, what we're going to do on this subdivision, because it is so nicely wooded, I've walked it with Attorney Kretzel before we did put a contract together. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and just clear the amount of the roadway for right now. We're not going to clear any lots up front. And then we're going to clear lots as we do the subdivision, because what we want to do is, because of the power lines that are back in here, we're going to leave a buffer zone across the back of here and across the back of here to be able to keep those blocked in.
Okay, so you'll have a tree line up top, and then you're going to have the open space or green space to the left there.
Exactly. All this will be green space over in here. This will all be left natural. There'll be no roadway built through here. This will stay natural. The roadway will come across from Brothers Way. And then what happens is, like I say, across this whole thing and this whole thing, we're going to leave about a 40-foot buffer zone of trees. We're willing to put a conservation easement on it so it can never be cut by the future owners also, to keep some privacy between the lots.
Thank you.
They're existing.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from members of the commission? Commissioner Locks.
Sev, I know you said there's that much traffic that's going to be developed caused by this, but did you do any type of traffic study going out to West Street?
No, we haven't done a traffic study, but we looked into the traffic
That's a
generation.
bad area that
Pardon?
comes down that hill.
That's an existing condition.
I get it.
Yeah, and we are planning to tie
Safety
to the
is our
north.
number one concern. So I'd like to see one done if possible.
But we can look into that.
Mr. Chairman, Mark Levy, President of Levy Development again. Sandy, what we could do, I've already actually talked to a traffic study, Scott Hestius, which does a lot of work for me, and told me we may want to have his opinion given on this to see what the level of traffic changes. So he's already aware of it. I've already talked to him a little bit about it because I was thinking about that too. It's just his report couldn't be done for tonight. So,
Especially if you want to make a left out of there.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't even imagine.
Yep, definitely. Nice thing about it is what we are doing is we are going to have the north facing this access way later. The Forgola property that is over here is up for sale right now. So what happens eventually, that'll get developed, and then this road will go all the way out to West Pines. That can get all the way out to Welch Road eventually down the road too. So hopefully that'll alleviate some of it in the future. And I have to think with this getting developed that eventually that's going to get developed next, because that's really the next piece. And there's not much left in town.
But we're still talking now.
No,
if you
definitely.
develop right away.
Yep, exactly.
You all set, Sue?
Yeah.
So, 1 second, Bob. I think that you all should take that as a formal request from the commission that we get a traffic study submitted to us before we act on this. All right? Anyone have an objection? Any other commission members have an objection to that?
I think Sue's right.
I think Sue raises a good point in West Street, and the safety and the traffic on West Street has certainly been something that we've talked about for a long time. So thank you, Sue, for raising that. Bob Soka.
Just one final question. Is there any state traffic study that's already been done in that area? I know they're working on it. I'm wondering if there's something that we could compare. I understand you have your own people that you work with. Is there a state study as well so we can make sure the numbers are, comparable?
When Scott Haskell will do the report, he'll consult with the state. And there has been a lot of studies like for the retail center down the street, hotels, and other developments. So there's available data.
Okay.
There's available data.
I'd like to see the
But I just want you
comparison.
to know, so you know, no matter what the study comes up with, you could do a standard subdivision with 33 lots.
Understand it.
Any other members? You all set, Bob?
I'm fine, thank you.
Any other members of the commission have any further questions? Commissioner Santago.
Thank you. Just for public consumption, and Sev is.
No, we need to know.
Sev, you're correct. Is that if you didn't want to do a open space change, because we're changing the property, you're proposing change the property from a straight subdivision to an open space subdivision. That's why you're here. Not for the site plan. You got to come
That's
back for
right.
that. If you didn't want to do that, you could come here tonight and say, I want to put a subdivision there. And if you were in regulation, whatever, we'd be obliged to say yes to that because it's your property. And
Well,
if you're
we meet
within
the
that
zoning regulations,
for zoning regulations, we're obliged to follow zoning regulations. We would have to say yes to that. So we would have a choice on that. So our thing is you want to make essentially a zone change, which is why you're here, and we're getting opinions on whether we want a zone change for the open space. And the trade-off is more density for more open space, which is why that reg is there.
it's not really a zone change.
Yeah, I understand.
Change in layout.
Yeah, I understand. For vernacular speaking.
The legal zone will still be R40.
Right.
So it doesn't change.
Right, exactly. But, just for purpose. So that's just for public consumption, Mr. Chair, just for people to understand, kind of what we have. But I think Sue's point is a exceedingly valid point in regards to safety, particularly on that end of town. So I think the environmental concerns as well as the traffic concerns is kind of what we need to look at before we rule on anything. So I think just for edification, right?
Yes, and Mr. Santaco, you're 100% correct, because when I first bought this property, the idea was not to come here and have a public hearing to do an open space subdivision, which was to come in and have a a regular conventional subdivision and just go about that and get it approved. But when we start looking at the property, and I told Seb, see what you can do and see what we would get for open space. I never thought we'd end up with 17.5 acres compared to 3 point some odd acres. So when we see the bigger yield, that's why we decided to go this route, to be able to save the extra property and not be able to, for the neighbors, and not be able to do that through road that could be detriments to some of the neighbors in the other properties also. That was the reason for it.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's it.
Any other questions for members of the commission? Commissioner Volpe.
Hi, Sev. So my question is, this is a wonderful thing to give us these 17 some acres, but I'm looking at the regulations and I'm thinking about the piece and how it's been spoken about that it's woods and, wetlands. Is there any intention, if the subdivision does move forward, as you mentioned is your intention, to create some sort of space for the public to utilize this area, such as trails or any kind of signage about the parcel being historic, a space where if all that traffic is being generated, maybe people can enjoy the 17 acres and it's not just woods where ticks are. You know what I'm saying?
We could place signage. It's up to the town what they want to do with the property. You can put ball fields if the town wants. I mean, there's some level land there that we can put trails, but it's up to the town what they want to do. We will put signage that's open space and can be enjoyed by the public.
I get that. I'm just, I'm looking at the regulation. I see under C, it says to conserve forest, wildlife, agricultural, water supplies, but it says not limited to water courses, significant stands of trees, individual trees of significant size, and rock. So I'm just, again, trying to see how the proposed open space fits within our regulation, other than for the design of the development in such a way to appropriately use the
It
land.
fits with the regulation because we're not just given wetlands, we're given upland. And that is very valuable property, not only for somebody that wants to build, but it's valuable for the public because they can access easily without going through wetlands. And it can be utilized for multiple reasons. There's no rocks there. There's a sand and gravel type of terrain. There's no old rocks or stone walls, that kind of thing. But definitely trails can be implemented there.
Cool. Thank you. I'm just of the mind that open space should be usable in accordance with all those houses.
It is usable.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just one.
Commissioner Salka.
Not to belabor the point, but just, I guess one comment I want to make on if we open this open space to the public, we're just generating more traffic. So we go from 33 houses to 36, but on the other hand, we're generating traffic with the open space and people walking in the wetlands. So, we just need to be careful what we're talking about with regards to traffic. We're generating more traffic if we open it up to the public, just as a side comment.
Yeah, we're not proposing anything. It's up to the commission what they want to do with that open space.
Thank you.
Okay, Sev, I have some questions. Under 3-07.4, which sets out standards and conditions, minimum standards and conditions for an open space subdivision, item number 1 states that street layout shall be designed as a loop road where practicable. Permanent cul-de-sac shall not be serviced more than 25% of all lots unless waived by the commission for a good cause. So are you saying to me, because I look at the layout and it looks like almost 100% of that subdivision is served by cul-de-sacs, are you saying that it's not practical to put a loop road in that subdivision?
It's not practical. Also, this is based on, because we live in that loop, that stop to the north, the number of lots that are served by cul-de-sac is the one from the intersection of the road to the cul-de-sac. So it's not 100% of the lots that are served by cul-de-sac. Because once you create that loop, then you have a connection all the way to Welch Road. That's our intent. But it is, if you do a loop road in there, you're going to end up with smaller lots, which we didn't want to do. We would go to the minimum, which is 22.5, versus go to the larger lots and have, more open space.
So as a person who's going to have to weigh in on this ultimately, tell me what the good cause is that we're going to have to find to forego that minimum requirement or standard, actually.
It's the additional open space that you're getting.
Okay. Moving further down into the regulation, it states that the open space preservation subdivision, open space should be intended for scenic value and shall be determined by its visibility from a significant number of dwellings and or length of street. Can you confirm that that actually is happening here?
What I can confirm you, if you look at the list of items in the, that area is wooded right now, so it's hard to see anything. But once the subdivision is built, you'll be able to look at the west hills toward the lake compounds. But if you look at the list of items that we need to meet, we have to meet two of the criteria. And the one you're looking at,
So just to be clear, I am looking at Regulation 3-07.4 entitled Standard and Conditions, and it begins with this sentence. All open space preservation subdivisions, which is what you're applying for, shall, the word shall is very important, right? Conform to the following minimum standards and or condition unless otherwise noted. And then it lists a series of conditions. Under A, there are general conditions. There are 6 of them there. I'm looking at those and I'm asking, how do you meet a number of those? One of which was the loop road / cul-de-sac versus cul-de-sac. Another one was the one I just brought up, which is that the open space shall have scenic value and shall be determined by its visibility from a significant number of the dwellings and or length of street. If I read that, and I could turn to the attorney, I guess, the way I read that is what it says to me is that it shall be visible by a significant number of the dwellings in the subdivision plan. And if I look at the map that's up there, I'm asking you, is it visible? Is that open space to the west visible to a significant number of the dwellings in that open space layout that you're showing me?
I believe so, because this rises, at the next meeting, we can bring the topography. This rises as you go west here, and this will be visible, yes.
Okay, I think you did submit something on topography, but it wasn't very clear, so it was very difficult to read, which I think is some of the stuff that Caleb and Christina maybe were talking about. You couldn't really see. Okay, if you could just clear that up for us, please. Moving on to let me go back up, 4-07.4B, it talks about reasons, right? Except if one or more of the following criteria are met, and then it lists 3 different criteria. One is a pretty broad one. In the opinion of the commission, blah, 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 it's better served than by a conventional subdivision. I'm going to guess that you're probably hanging your hat on that, but let's ask about the other 2. The application covers land adjoining to which can be integrated with other open space preservation subdivision that has been approved under this section. There is no adjoining open space preservation subdivision that adjoins this piece of property currently. Is that correct?
I don't believe so, an open space preservation subdivision, but there may be open space that was left over here when the subdivision was done to the north of us. There may be some open space here.
Okay, can you please look into that for us when you come back in a couple? Number 3, there too, which talks about it being continuous to existing open space. I'd like to have you look into that as well and let me know if that's true. But again, I'm going to guess that you're probably hanging your hat on B1. You talked about the amount of open space under both proposals. What percentage of that open space under either proposal consists of wetlands? What's the big lake or river there? How much of that is covering, how many acres of land does that cover?
Well, under the conventional, we will give 3.98 acres of open space, which quite a bit of that would be wetlands, probably 80%. On the open space subdivision, as you can see, it's a much more upland area. We could provide that percentage.
Yeah, if you could, and again, an engineer can tell me what acreage is that wetland that you're showing on your map?
Yes.
I want an acreage number. If it's 2 acres, 80%, I just want to know what that number is, because that, to Commissioner Volpe's point, is not usable open space per se. I haven't visited the property.
From
I
a
don't know if
visual
that's, is that,
standpoint, I'll provide that
is that-
information.
Is that an open lake, or is it more of a overgrown wetland area?
It's an overgrown upland area. There's a brook in the middle here. There's a water course.
Okay.
And then there's some of the areas expanding when we have large storms, events. Some of that area is kind of flat. So there's skunk cabbage and that kind of thing that you see growing on either side of the water course. And then it starts rising a little bit. So,
Okay. Could I just make a request to Mark or the owner who owns the property now, I guess? Is it possible, and Dave and Mary Ellen, you'd have to organize this, is it possible for us to take a tour of that area so we can get out there and actually walk it and look at it? Because I want to get familiar with what I'm actually talking about, get a sense of what the topography is other than looking at a topography map, look at what that wetland is out there, look at what that actually consists of, as opposed to, there was an aerial map that floated around here earlier, which is great, but it's not really as satisfying to me as putting boots on the ground. Is that something we can organize?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it'll be a special meeting on site walk.
Are you agreeable to that, Mark?
Let me just concur with the seller's attorney to make sure.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I'm sure it is, and I want to take a look at it before anything else happens to it. So, okay. I just, Dave, and correct me if I'm wrong, or Mary Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I do believe that in that situation that the public is invited to attend that as well. That invitation is open to them. Is that
It's up to
correct?
the property owner, but hearing what I heard, you could.
Is that something that would present a problem for you? I mean, I don't know how many people would want to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the public.
Okay.
I think, Richard, he's asking with the public also. With the public, he wants to know also.
The liability too, I don't like the issue. We don't want to allow to run.
Okay. Dave and Mary Ellen, can you work out details on this and find out exactly what we're required to do, and then see if it's possible to facilitate that between Mark and the attorney for the owner? So
Typically, Mr. Chairman, you could walk it, not have a discussion on the site, come back out, come back to the street, and then have a discussion so the public could hear it.
okay, if you can, if you could schedule that, I for one certainly would appreciate it. So, have you all set before I open up to members of the public, or you got any other?
just want to mention something. You talked about the wetlands. You don't know if that's accurate or not. This wetland is the delineated wetlands by a soil scientist, which was located by a surveyor instrument. So it is accurate.
Okay. Thanks, Sev.
Otherwise, I'm done.
Okay, so just like usual, we'll open up the public hearing to members of the public. First, we ask for people who are in favor of the application to come forward, identify yourself, give us your address for the record. Again, it's for people who are in favor of the application, if they can come forward and let us know.
Not interior.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Attorney Richard Cresswell, my office is at 100 Queen Street in Southington. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the members of the Borsowich family to make it a little bit easier and to make my remarks brief and succinct. I prepared a memo, which I'd like to submit for the record, and I'm going to read off the memo. Obviously, there's a lot of technical expertise that goes into these types of applications. I represent, at the present time, 9 separate owners of the property, including a couple of estates and essentially grandchildren of the original owners, who were John and Frances Borsowich, and they bought the property in the early 1900s. There's, as I say, the grandchildren. There is one surviving sibling, and that is Charlie Borsowitz, who lives with his nephew over here, Anthony Safone, right now, due to some health issues. I think it basically was Charlie's decision a while back that we should look into the idea of selling the property. It's been a difficult issue for him because it's historically the family home, and it's been in the family for about a century. His parents were Polish immigrants, as many of the people on West Street were, including my maternal grandparents. And they were small dairy farmers. So dairy farmers don't use environmentally hazardous chemicals, as you know. We feed the cattle off the grass, and we don't want to put herbicides on the grass and kill our cattle and poison our milk. So the property was used as a dairy farm roughly until about the 1960s, early 1970s. There was one son who continued the tradition, and then it became big business. And as with many small farms, it just fell by the wayside. So the family has come together, and they are spread far and wide. I have clients in California. I have clients in New York. I have clients in South Carolina and clients in New York. And they have come together. They've agreed that it's time to pass the baton and transition the property to its use as a residential area. Obviously, we've heard much about permitted zoning versus special zoning, which is what this open space preservation subdivision application is all about. It's special zoning that takes into account the perhaps more efficient, environmental friendly aspect of developing the property. So having discussed all of this with the family, they would like me to bring to your attention some of the basic concepts that they feel this application supports. First and primarily, it preserves over 17 acres of the property, which is not wasteland. It's good land by and large, except for the area that Sev has described as being the actual wetlands where the brook runs through it and there's overflow, etc. So that's a huge amount of open space, which would be public access. Some concern, of course, as to whether or not you want to invite a lot of people in there in view of parking and other issues, ingress, egress issues. Secondly, they like the idea of the minimal disruption to the topography. When you walk it, if you come in from the West Street side, it's high, and that's where the old farmhouse was. There's remnants of the original dairy barn, the barn that was used, and then the property slopes. And when that's opened up and that north and that east-west road is built, it's going to have just an absolutely outstanding view of the westerly side of our valley. I've been in that property as a kid years ago when it was more open and it was farmed, and it's just absolutely a stunning view going down into that valley. The lower part of it we've maintained as a grassland, and it's been hayed over the years so that we have maintained a little bit of the farming tradition. But the roadways are considerably reduced from what you would see in terms of a conventional subdivision. They also, in their own way, suggest that there's less runoff, there's less highway, there's less roadway, less impervious surface. And as Sev has pointed out, you have less, perhaps, grass areas with less chemicals and more environmental friendly environment. They also like the idea that the regulation looks at the possibility of solar energy applications. And of course, with the east-west orientation of the street, the principal street, fronts of the houses facing south would be accessible to sun, and the other way around for the houses facing the north. So they really like the idea of seeing their precious land not just cut up into 40,000 square foot lots. It's not a matter of 33 lots or 36 lots to them. It's seeing this area developed in a fashion that, as a family, they can be proud to have participated in this. So without belaboring it, you've heard all the technical jargon and so forth and so on. A third of the acreage will be given up, or maybe more. I think Sevi is saying close to 40 will be given up to open space for whatever purpose. Open space is open space. If nobody uses it, if there's no trails, it serves a benefit as such. There's trees, there's fauna, there's wildlife in there. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be active open space to be open space. We all know how important just having a natural environment is. So they really feel strongly about this this particular approach. As I say, they really don't have a pony in this race. This property is going to be sold. There's no question about it. So I'm not here, to sell you on the idea. I'm just here to tell you that as a family, they unanimously approved the idea of Mark Lovely coming in with this open space preservation subdivision. They thought that the transition from their historical dairy farm use to this type of subdivision would just be great for the people who are going to reside there. The neighbors, I don't think the neighbors, to any extent, are going to be harmed. And then, ultimately, I think the town will benefit. It should end up with some first-class residences on the property. And again, Mark was chosen very carefully to be the developer of the property. I'm not embarrassed to say that. We looked at other people, and we just felt that he had the type of relationship with the town and he had the reputation with this commission and with the other public officials in town that he essentially delivers what he says he's going to deliver. So again, that's my client's point of view.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions? Thanks for your input. Anyone else, member of the public, who'd like to testify in favor of this application at this time? Seeing none, is there anybody who would like to testify in opposition to this application? So let's try to do this as orderly as possible, one at a time, and let's begin with the name and address.
My name is Brian Cooper. I live at 43 Brothers Way here in Southington, and we did our best to be organized. We had a meeting last night at my house where 40 of the 60 homes were represented to try to be organized to come to you guys and not look like a barbaric group who's mad that the division built next. There's some things that I think is important for everybody to understand before we get started. And if I can approach a map, I'm just going to start with the basics.
Hey, Brian,
yes.
Rather than do that, why don't you use this? Yeah. No, I'll give it to you. Here. So I think you just want just that button right there, right?
Maybe just,
That way we get you on the mic at the same time.
Mr. Chair, maybe we could just move the mouse real quick. The bubbles are great.
All right, so what everybody needs to understand is right off the rip, there's a lot of people here to talk tonight, and there's going to be a lot of emotion. So we're going to do our best to contain the emotion. Take it easy, Hal. And we're going to try to get our point across the best we can. But I think the one thing everybody has to understand before we go here, and I love your idea of the tour, come on down, is you'll see. But right here at this intersection, there are 60 homes that are R40 homes that turn left at that intersection right now. 60 homes have one way in and one way out of that property onto West Street. So what is being proposed, 4 homes right here that comes off of West Street, which is already crowded. Right there on the corner of Brothers Way and Churchill is my kids' bus stop to where they go to school. And it's already crowded every morning when everyone has to make a right onto Churchill. So there is a traffic issue, and it's going to be you're going to hear a lot of reasons why tonight that we're concerned about the traffic that's already there. Turning left off of West Street into this neighborhood is a crapshoot. It's like playing Russian roulette to turn into your street already. We've had people get hit from behind. There's no traffic light. There's nothing. You just look in the rearview mirror and pump your brakes and hope they see you. And adding more cars getting in and out, there's going to be a problem. But I think one of the biggest things that we have to think about is this beautiful area here is kind of a conservation area to all of us. We have bobcat that lives in there. We have coyotes that live in there. We go back there, my kids look at the deer. It's a beautiful area. It really is. And we've been contacted by the DEP out of New Hampshire that there is a protected species, the long-eared bat that lives back there too, that they're looking at right now, that is on their list of nationally protected species of animals, and they've been in contact with us too. So we're gonna do our best to be organized. Craig's gonna come up first, and he's got a bullet point, a list of things that we talked about last night that we think are very important to this discussion. We really appreciate you taking the time. We would really appreciate you doing a visit. And I've got a beautiful air conditioned side by side. I will take you on a tour of this property, a very nice tour. It will take you back through the swamp and let you see that firsthand, the 8 Mile River that you can see in the blue there. And we'll show you the property firsthand because it is an adjoining, that's our neighbor property. And there's a lot to be seen there. So Craig, you want to take the helm here and go through our list?
Craig Zoll, 350 Churchill Street, Southington, Connecticut. I'm actually a customer of Mark's. He built my mother's house. She has since passed away, so. I'd also like to give some clarifications to the previous comments about the traffic. Not only do all of the houses exit Churchill onto West Street at that one intersection, the other problem with that intersection is that there's a hill. So most of the neighborhood is flat, and then there's a steep hill as you exit the neighborhood. There are no clear lines of sight for that hill. So if you're going up that hill at night, it's easy. You look for the headlights on the trees. But during the day, there's a lot of swerving that happens. The telephone poles are fairly close. There's been a couple of incidents with cars hitting the telephone pole up there and so forth. And the neighborhood has been trapped at least once by a telephone closing that road, and all 60 houses were not accessible by emergency services. In addition to that, we've had a couple of trees down across the road at least 3 or 4 times where I will tell you, I am the person who chainsaws the trees typically to get the road open again until other cars can get in there and move the trees out of the way. So we run into those types of problems with that neighborhood. We would love to have that as a U leading into the new open area that is out there. But I also want to let you know that something that hasn't come up is that there is a Eversource right-of-way right behind that property, and high tension wires that snap and crackle and buzz and do all that type of stuff, which may affect the property values of Mark being able to sell that property. But also, if they open up that area, they have to deal with that open right-of-way for Eversource. In addition to that, although you haven't found them, there are many trails in that open area today. They have been cleared by various people. They are wide enough for ATVs and off-road vehicles to go down. And there's a number of hiking trails that lead down that way. A matter of fact, there's a woman down on the other section of Churchill, the one that comes in off of Mount Vernon, who maintains trails that lead up into this area. And she owns a large chunk of that material, that area. We also had, several years ago, there was an adjoining open area that was the Forestville Fish and Game Club, and that was all rezoned to R40 from Fish and Game Club land. And when that happened, I will tell you I was very upset because the land directly across the street which had been owned by the Fish and Game Club for 150 years, now became an additional 10 houses. So we had to deal with that change in the neighborhood and losing additional open space in the neighborhood. Sorry, I wasn't going from notes yet. We already talked about the endangered species, the bats. I will tell you I own about an acre of property. Along the back of my property, which borders on the 8 Mile River, I have, I don't know, 24 bat houses out there, most of which are populated and keep down the mosquito population in the neighborhood. I couldn't tell you that they're long-eared bats or not, but I can tell you that they inhabit those houses out there, and they're fairly active back there. I have seen bobcat, bear, deer, turkeys, foxes all come out of that open area. During the winter time, when the wetlands frost over a little bit, the dog really likes to go chomping through that area. In addition to that Eversource right-of-way there does have a large dumping ground up at the top of it, where there are lots of telephone poles, coils of wire, piles of trash. I have not cataloged it. I've seen it, but there's lots of stuff there. And I heard last night at the meeting that there is a large concern that there may be actually PCBs in that area that may affect the wells of the existing houses. Let's see, we talked about the traffic study. One of the things that did come up in last night's meeting was construction. So first, there's that it's a very well-established woods. The trees in that area are 100 to 200-year-old trees. Usually they're any place from new growth to 2 feet, 3 feet in diameter trees in there, both pines and oaks. There's a lot of scrub in there. But, it would be a shame to see it clear cut and all that mature tree growth go away. In addition to that, we have the construction vehicles that will be traveling on the road to build the area. We're concerned about safety issues concerning school buses, kids in the neighborhood. The road coming in from West Street, as I already mentioned, does not have a clear line of sight for that hill. And so as a result, if you're moving heavy equipment up and down that hill, first, I'm not sure long equipment can make it up and down that hill because it is fairly steep. It is very narrow. I know that it adheres to the town's standard, but if you have a guest over and they park in the street, that road becomes a hazard, and the police have been involved with that road several times to clear off parked vehicles off of it, because if people park on both sides of the road, you cannot get in and out of the neighborhood. It's impossible. We already talked about the safety ingress to the area. We're concerned about the future development. So Mark is putting in that right-of-way that's going to lead into the new property. As I mentioned, the right-of-way for Eversource is back there. There is a large cleared area back there for that right-of-way that Eversource has maintained. There's actually a gravel road that goes down there. There is also a service road down that way. The service road is actually fairly flat, except for probably 300 or 400 feet from West Street, where it has that same hill that enters the neighborhood. So hopefully Mark could come down that service road rather than coming into the neighborhood and disrupting the neighborhood with the construction equipment. We also have some issues with the road. It was repaved last year, just the hill section. Coming off of the hill, there are a number of reoccurring potholes that have been patched by the city multiple times already. They've been cold patched. I'm sorry, I forgot your.
Right.
It's not in front of your house. It's yeah. So there's a reoccurring pothole The plows tear it open every year. First snowstorm, they come down, they rip open that pothole again. There are multiple phone calls for that pothole. So if you start having a lot of construction equipment coming up and down that road, it's already an iffy condition that's on that road. We also have concerns about the reduction of the wetlands. So that wetlands that you see on that map actually drains into the back of Rich's house. I saw Rich someplace here. There he is back there. And he actually, maintains the culverts that drain that area because if they get clogged, they do flood that whole area. And it drains behind his house. He has all sorts of skunk cabbage back there, and he has his own retaining area back there that he has to maintain, and his house to maintain that wetlands for flood conditions. Let's see. I think I got most of the ones that I had as bullet points. Oh, nope. Water runoff, the right of way. Oh, the schoolhouse. So one of the other things that's not shown on this map, and yes, your land is beautiful. We love your land and we like it as wilderness, but and we recognize that it will be built on at some point. It is historic land because next to their property is actually the schoolhouse, and the schoolhouse has been there since the 1800s. That I'm aware of, maybe even longer, and that is a historic building. I don't know whether the land stretches back this way, but in the expansion of this property, I'm not sure how it's going to impact that schoolhouse. I think I hit them all.
Okay, thank you. Is
that enough?
Thank you, Greg. Are there any questions for members of the commission for Greg? Seeing none, thank you for your input. Any other members of the public would like to testify in opposition to this application at this time?
If you would like, I can give you this discussion email.
Greg, Greg,
Greg, you want me to?
Greg, could we just get the next person up here right now?
Absolutely. Do you want me to email it to you, or do you just want?
You can just leave it here. Thanks.
There's notes on that one, but
great.
You're welcome.
Greg,
They're
Greg.
bulleted list.
Okay, thanks. A lot of people. Just start with your name and address,
Yeah,
please.
my name is Matt Miller. I live at Five Brothers Way. If you looked at the map, I'm the lucky house on the corner where the egress would be to enter the proposed new neighborhood if we went with the open acreage concept, right? I'm new to this as far as I've never lived in a neighborhood where you're going to get a new subdivision built. So I kind of feel like it's hard to know whether we should be for or against it as a neighborhood, because it's not clear, right, is proposal one that they presented that doesn't have as much open area, how much of that area that they're saying is going to be open would actually be buildable, right? Because it would be very interesting to know, like, how much land are they really giving up? And my assumption is, from questions we've asked, that neither one of these have been approved by zoning yet, right? So for us to make an educated decision is hard as a neighborhood, right? Because is what they're proposing where there's less acreage, could they really build that many lots because of the wetland, right? So I don't know if that can be answered today, but I feel like it's hard for us to make a decision as a neighborhood without some of that information and a little bit more understanding. And I think, the traffic has been brought up quite a bit, but to articulate how bad it is, I have a 5-year-old son. He goes to daycare, which is literally, I just Googled it, 0.6 miles from our house, right? And it's so difficult sometimes on West Street to turn out that it could literally take us round trip, my wife or I, like around 20 minutes, right, to go 0.6 miles to try to pull out. And then there's so much traffic on West Street, right, to get back to our neighborhood. So I know there's been questions about traffic. I can tell you, living in the neighborhood, there is a ton of traffic that is an issue coming off of West Street. And probably the biggest question that I have, and again, I don't know if this can be answered, but why does our neighborhood have to be disrupted? I understand that this property is going to be developed, But everybody bought into the neighborhood with the assumption that somebody wouldn't be able to come in and just kind of really kind of change the whole feel of the neighborhood, the safety of the neighborhood, right? Most of these developments have been done. If you're going to do it off of West Street, like why not create a road off of West Street, right? We called the zoning, my wife and I, and we also asked some questions to Mark, the neighborhood did, right, about why he wouldn't come off of West Street. And we didn't really we got different stories. One was, well, they don't want to sell some of the property that would make it accessible. There was another story that, hey, it wouldn't be possible because of how steep it would be to create that road. And then we asked, well, okay, well, it's pretty steep on Churchill. And the answer was, well, that was zoned prior when that was allowed. It wouldn't be allowed today, right? So if we're going to add all this more traffic coming in out of the neighborhood, how does it make sense if you wouldn't zone the same right of way with the same steepness, right? And that might not be the right terms that I'm using, but it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense, right? If you wouldn't approve something today to come off of West Street, if that was an option, why is it okay to use Churchill, which doesn't fit the requirements today? You're going to hear from a lot of other neighbors that are pretty passionate. But again, my point is, I don't feel like we've been given enough information to know which option would be correct, right? Because not all the questions have been answered. We're not even sure, has the property been bought yet, right? Because this feels like Mark is trying to get an understanding, if he buys the property, right, is he going to actually be able to develop it? And he wants option 2, and that's going to enable him to do a certain amount of homes to begin with, right? But then it doesn't stop there. Again, do a traffic study. If you make a connector all the way through another development that he's already put in place, right, what does that really do to the traffic? I'm not going to guess that it really clears it up. It probably makes it worse, right? So these are just all questions that we have as concerned, a concerned neighborhood, right? That we all bought in. It's a very calm neighborhood. There's only one way in. There's only one way out. There's already a lot of houses. And I feel like many of these points aren't being addressed. And I would appreciate some answers on some of the questions that I did ask. And then going through this process, one of the things that I would love to say is that, you know, as a concerned person in the neighborhood, my eyes are open that I'm certainly going to do everything I can to make sure that all the zoning laws are being followed and everything is being done in accordance, right? And I appreciate everybody's time listening on the panel. And hopefully you can provide us some assurances that whatever is going to be done is not going to be wildly disruptive to our neighborhood and unsafe for our kids. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And I'll just say, Matt, to your questions, that, you know, that's kind of the seat that we sit in, right? I mean, that's what we're here to make a decision on. So part of of what you're hearing the conversation up here, I think it's fair to say, and not wanting to speak for anybody, we're trying to do our due diligence as best as possible to get information like things that have been brought up by you and others still that will come after you, to try to find out as much information as we can. So at the end of the day, when we make a decision, either way, we feel like we've done that with as much information as available and hopefully make it in the best interest of everybody.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, the last comment I wasn't going to make it, but I would make is, you know, we got this letter in the mail as, you know, I came back from vacation with my family, and there really wasn't a lot in this, right, other than a very brief description. And it appeared to us, the way it was rolled out, like, hey, it's a done deal already, right? It's either option 1 or option 2. And then there are a lot of questions, a lot of dialogue with Mark. Very nice guy, answered all the questions the best he could, but definitely with a slant toward, hey, you should go with option 2. If you go with option 2, I'll make sure that we try to do the best we can to make it the least disruptive we can. But if you go with option 1, all bets are off, right? And that leaves a really bad taste in everybody in the neighborhood's mouth, at least mine, right? Because it feels like some manipulation, right? And it really erodes trust, right? So I would hope that we could have some of our trust restored too here tonight and as we go through the process. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate your time. Next.
Hi, Al Benetton. I live at 21 Churchill Street. I'm the first house on the road. I witnessed all the crashes down on West Street and Churchill Street at the intersection there, and some of them have been very, very bad. It's a miracle nobody has been killed yet. Number 2 concern is, if that's the only way in and out, if Churchill Street gets blocked, how are first responders going to get down there with their equipment? you were looking at a possible tragedy happening down there. There should be at least 2 access routes to get into this area so first responders can get in there and do their job. In the way it goes now, even if it's not blocked, they have to go all the way down to the bottom of the hill, take a right, and then come all the way back up to the top of the hill towards West Street to get to their point of the emergency, if that's where it's located. That road was closed for 15 hours from them power lines being down and the tree being down at the bottom of the hill by West Street. 15 hours. No one could get in, no one could get out. And that's not a very good situation at all. Number 2, traffic, yes, that's going to be a big deal. 300-400 more trips a day up and down that one street. That's not to mention FedEx, UPS, Amazon. God knows there's 2 dozen of them going up and down the road every day. That's another concern of mine. And if you had another access route halfway up the hill on West Street, you could put a light there, and that would eliminate Southington International Dragway on West Street, because they're doing 60, 70, 75 miles an hour. They're still in I-84 mode going up that road. And some of them even carry it on to Churchill Street already.
Hey, Matt, I live on Hobart Street, and I could attest to you that we get people on that road driving that fast as well. And that's
I believe it
right out here.
I believe it. Yep, I believe it. But yeah, but they're just getting off the highway and they're still in highway mode. And as far as the property is concerned, next door to my house, my backyard basically, it was a junkyard for many, many years with lots of telephone poles, which were back in them days were soaked in creosote. I don't know if you were aware of that, which can affect the groundwater drastically. There was all kinds of junk vehicles and cars back there, and who knows what else, with gas tanks that rotted out and oil and gasoline leaking into the soil. There might be a remediation problem with the soil there. And that's basically my main concerns. Yeah, and like they said before, have you ever tried to take a left out of Churchill Street onto West Street? Good luck. Thank you very much, people.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate your time.
Here.
Oh,
One
sorry.
quick question for Al.
Okay. Al.
Sir.
Al, somebody has a question for you. Commissioner Coles, go ahead.
Oh, thanks for coming up. Can I just a quick question? So you're the first driveway on Churchill Street, and I'm just trying to get, based on the questions that we've had before, in some context. It shows about 265 feet from West Street. Do you have cars that get to your driveway backed up from West Street?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. But I'm sure with all the additional 70 to 100 more cars, depending on how many cars each household has, 2 or 3 cars, that's going to be 70, 80, 85 more cars. God knows how many trips going up and down.
No, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to get some context. Thanks, Al.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Next.
Pamela J.D. Paulo, 54 Delahunty Drive, Southington. I think I'm opposed to this project only because I think it needs a lot of time and it needs a lot of analysis and a very comprehensive one on the part of this board, which, by the way, I want to thank you for all your efforts and appreciate all the time that you put in, because the pace of development in Southington has been really very dizzying to me over these many years that I've been living here and also being in business here. But I think that as a longtime Southington resident and a longtime business owner and property owner, I think that the days of Southington being having developments like this being fast-tracked and automatic shoe-in and so forth, I think those days should be really over. And I think a lot of people in Southington that I've listened to, my customers and just people around town, because I try very hard to keep my finger on the pulse of what people are thinking. And I think that it's very important that we consider some things. We consider the safety and the fire safety, which the gentleman before me already mentioned. We have to think about stretching very too thinly our government, our town services, the police department. I mean, last year they added a police officer, and the government, the town government, and Mark Shota and all of the town, council is trying to balance all the budgets all of the time and trying to make sure we have services to help the town. We have our Board of Education and so forth. So I think those are all things that play into this, as well as the people who live in the area. So first of all, the traffic on West Street is horrendous right now. So I do think that this development would create a lot of extra traffic that is really going to create a lot of hazards. And so safety is a top issue. And then you have, so many people living in that area that are having problems. So I agree with the gentleman before him, also Matt, the things that he said. So I think that you have to do a really comprehensive analysis. I think that although they do have the open space is a very large area, that's good. I think that's a great offer. But what I would like to suggest is that they consider doing an additional open space area to the right side, which is that the east, I believe? Side. I'd like to see an additional area of open space there. So instead of 17.6 acres, how about 25 or 30 acres? And then you can take away some of those homes, and I would not be opposed to it then if they could reduce the number of homes and increase the number of acreage for open space. I think there's room for compromise there. So that obviously the people who spoke before me said this land is going to be built on. Yes, it obviously is. But how about let's get up with the times and protect a little bit more of the environment and have a little bit less traffic problems. I think there should definitely be a traffic study, and I think that the town, if necessary, should undertake its own traffic study or require the builder to provide 2 traffic studies, okay? They should provide one who works for Mark Lovely and someone else who is an independent person. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pamela. Any other member of the public like to speak in opposition to this application?
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Tammy Balch. I live at 1230 West Street, so I'm right on the corner of Churchill and West. Yes, traffic is a huge hindrance. It's very dangerous. People go way too fast. People fly up and down the street, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. We're hearing squealing, going up the hill. It's, I'm sure, as it is everywhere. My concern right now is there's been no discussion whatsoever about how the property is going to be cleaned up. As Al had said, it's been a junkyard for at least 50 years. So the farm has been gone many, many years, with all due respect. But let's put it out there. There could be lots of contamination. There were years ago, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I'm sorry, really nervous. I don't talk in front of people, so. There was an issue on the property. DEP was there. They were in hazmat suits. They took away 55-gallon drums of, I don't know what it was. Maybe he does. I don't. The Cresol poles, the transformers, all of that could be contaminating the ground. We have wells. So one of my big concerns is when they start stirring up all of this ground, what's going to happen to the water source? Is there, I'm concerned because I don't want to have to hook into city water. I can't afford to do that. And I like my well. But what's going to happen to the wells? Is it going to be contaminated? Is the, moving the earth around going to do something to our stream coming in wherever our water source comes from? Is that going to get contaminated? Is it going to get blocked? I mean, there's no guarantee because it is sandy. There's a lot of rocks. There's, a lot of things that could happen. And the other thing is really, well, that's really it. Is DEP going to be involved in testing the soil before they start doing anything? Or this is a big thing for us. And because of the wildlife and everything that lives there, I like my little bunnies every summer, and it's great to watch the coyotes and the turkeys. I had 23 baby turkeys in my driveway one year. That could all go away. You disrupt their life, their homes. I'm not totally opposed. And like everybody said, something's going to happen one way or another. But be realistic, be honest, be upfront, do your due diligence by testing the soil, Mr. Lovely. Make sure my well is not going to get destroyed because of all of this. And that's my say.
So Tammy, if I could just speak to that point, right? Because it's a real concern. I'm not sure if it's state or federal law that, and I'm going to probably butcher the name of the act, but I think it's called the Land Transfer Act, which requires, Dave, you probably know more about this than I do, obviously, but it requires that any environmental issue be remediated prior to any building being constructed on that property. Is that a fair butchering of what I'm trying to say, Dave? Or
yeah, at the very base, you'd ask for a phase 1, and then if they discover something, it goes to the next phase,
right?
And then remediation, to walk on the property to see. dive into the historical records of any cleanups that was mentioned. So there is responsibility of the landowner involved there. And it's due diligence on whoever buys it anyways.
Right. And any funding institution requires that as a part of their checklist, if you will, or punch list to give a mortgage or give funding to anybody who's looking for that. So unless Mark has got deep pockets and he's going to pay for this with cash, he still would have to go through a funding institution, whatever bank it is or wherever it might be.
Right.
They're going to require that, as Dave said, a phase one be completed on the property. And again, environmental issues are phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and it deals with getting further and further along. If a phase one finds certain levels of contaminants, you go to a phase 2, that will find, look a little bit further and so on, and then eventually get to a point where it would need to be remediated in some acceptable fashion that's acceptable. I think it's regulated by the federal government and probably by the state government as well. So just to speak to that, because it is a real concern, I understand that, but I don't want people to feel like that's going to be something, we don't really have a say in that.
Right.
But I want you to understand that it is something that gets addressed ultimately, regardless of what the development looks like at the end of the day, if there is a development at all.
I just don't want to lose my well, so don't shake the ground too much, okay? Please.
Mine neither. Just a quick little side
Oh, no. Tammy, are you all set, Tammy?
I'm all set.
Okay,
Can I ask this?
hold on. Commissioner Coles has a question for you.
Hi, Tammy. Same question that I asked Al before, too. Can you just, and you really are on the corner, can you give us some context about how many cars, and we'll say rush hour traffic in the morning, 8 o'clock or so, 7:30, about how many cars back from West Street do you typically see?
Up Churchill?
Yeah.
At any given time?
No, just pretty much in the morning,
In the
when people are going to work.
There's probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 cars that back up.
Okay.
And depending if it's school time or not, school buses, for them to take a left-hand turn out of West Street,
Tricky.
somebody's going to get hurt.
Good. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Next.
Good evening. Hello. My name is John Patterson. I live at 150 Churchill Street. So, as Matt was talking, I live next to Matt. So I'm the next fortunate guy on Churchill Street that with this variance, I would be right in the direct line of fire as well with cars coming out of the deal. So I'm not going to repeat. I've got the same concerns that everyone else does, but I'm just going to bring a few other things to the table. So a couple concerns that haven't really been mentioned is really the financial impact. All right, I've been on Churchill Street since '97. I was one of the first homes that moved in when Milo and Denorfia did their extension. But I'm not going to be in Southington forever. And with a variance to any type of zoning, I am concerned about how that might impact the pricing of the houses. Smaller lots, smaller houses as compared to everything else that's almost an acre. That does concern me. I also think it's important for this group, because some of you may not have been on the board since I moved into Southington. But, when we first moved in, I moved into an 8-house subdivision in addition to the 14 homes that were already on Churchill. All right, since that time, Brothers Way was extended through the original cul-de-sac and 4 more homes were added. Then Lady Slipper Lane was built with 2 cul-de-sacs and another 13 homes. Churchill Street was extended and another 5 homes were added. Princess Pine Pathway was created and 8 more homes were added. And Amber Lane was created a few years ago with 9 more homes. So what began as a 9-home development turned into 48 homes. In addition to the 14 that are already there on Churchill, it's a pretty big spot. So again, I'm not going to repeat the traffic stuff. That is what it is. So I don't support either proposal, and I'll be back once it gets ready to go to a vote. But I do think it's important that when this group does consider this variance, take into consideration the things that we have all done in our neighborhood to keep it like it is, to protect it the way it is, and to protect the values of our homes. Because we just don't know, especially in this environment, with home prices being off the charts, what could happen in 12 months or 15 months when prices go back to where they should be. So thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Any questions? Next.
Good evening. Tim Cannell, and live at 79 Churchill Street. Thank you, members of the commission. Welcome to Southington, Sedwards. And Dave, how are you? So we've lived, my wife, Terry, and I have lived on Churchill Street for 31 years. We bought our property originally from Marge and John Hubany. Yes, John Patterson did invade our neighborhood with his family. And all of that was done, I think it was well planned, but it's a busy neighborhood. So we live on the original part of Churchill Street. Until the road was just repaved, we still had the original macadam surface on there. So we were, in fact, the last approved building lot on the street when we bought it, and our street ended. It was a dead end, and there were big cement blocks there. So it was pretty quiet. We've seen quite a bit of development. I think all of you have asked really good questions tonight, and we really appreciate that. I know that the Planning and Zoning Commission has an incredibly important job to represent the citizens of Southington and essentially protect our interest. I know Mr. Lovely certainly has a right to profit from his business, and which he has done. So that's fine. And I know the family wants to do something with their property. It doesn't necessarily have to be development. I mean, if you want to do really something really special with the property, can we work together with the town, refer it to the open space committee perhaps? I know that's a good chunk of change. I'm sure I have no idea what it is, but it would be something very special. I don't want to repeat what other folks have said. My main concern is safety in our neighborhood. In addition to everything that you've heard, we also have 3 full-size buses that run that street every single day during the school year. We've got at least 2 half buses that run that street every single day during the school year. And sometimes during the summer, we have that as well. I think if you add the impact of an additional, whether it's 33 or 36 homes to that section of Churchill Street, it would have a significant impact on our neighborhood. So not to belabor that point, what I hope is that the commission will require and will take into consideration some impact studies, because I don't think that this is a decision that should be taken lightly, and I know that you won't. I know the hearing tonight is on this special application. Sorry if my comments are offending anyone. The hearing is on a special application. I think it might be prudent just to table any action on that for the time being.
I think that's happening.
Okay,
We're not going to be taking action on this.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm really appreciative of the fact that you're going to go out and do a site visit, and I think walking the whole property, not just where the wetlands are, because as you go from the west to the east, so where that wetlands are, and you travel east and go up the property, you'll see the rise, and you'll see some of the things that people have mentioned. I do know when we voted just recently as a community to purchase the development rights for Southington Country Club, one of the big issues was the impact not only on the school district and the number of students. This would directly impact Thalberg Elementary School. And Thalberg Elementary School right now is, I don't know that we have additional space there. I think they're at about 470 students, give or take. They're jam-packed. The cost when and Dave probably has the figures, but the planning department did a wonderful study and a wonderful PowerPoint presentation on what the cost would be to the community at large if the 104 homes were built on what is Southington Country Club. Now, I know that the previous town planner used a particular study from one of our colleges and universities, and it gave a pretty conservative number at about 98 students. I don't think anyone who looked at that thought 104 homes, good-sized homes, 3 and 4 bedroom homes, were going to produce only 98 students. In our experience in the school district from the homes that have been built just recently shows it's about two or three students. So even if you looked at it as two students, you're probably talking about an additional 70 students. So multiply that by about, 13,000. That's about the net cost, I think, that was used in that study per student. So you're talking about adding another $1 or $1.25 million directly to the Board of Education budget just to accommodate those 70 students over the course of the next few years. I know you probably all remember that study. I know the PowerPoint is probably still on the YouTube channel or on the town website. There's some other factors there too in terms of the cost of maintaining roads. So we know that there's going to be a significant financial impact as well. I think the last thing that I want to say is that we just really want to make sure that our neighborhood is safe. Whatever happens, and I would reserve judgment on option one or option two. I don't think there's enough information available for anyone to say one is better than the other. But on both of those, feeding any development that's in there out onto Churchill Street, it's just not going to be safe. We see it every day. There's no way that you can ever convince any of us that that's a safe thing to do. Now, our street opens onto West Street. Yep, there are problems getting in and out, but a number of developments just north of us have been built, and those also open onto West Street. So I don't see any reason why there should be a road from that development, if that's what occurs, that comes out and puts that burden on Churchill Street. That just doesn't make sense to me. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I hope that your site visit is successful or at least informative. So thank you.
Any questions? I just, and part of what I like to do up here is just inform people of the different things that we consider, because while we come up here every 2 weeks, a lot of people don't show up here. This is an application that's cognitive of Section 8 of our regulations, which is our special permit regulations. And there's a whole set of guidelines in that section that we're required to consider whenever we're looking at an application like that. And just some of them are things that I see some themes coming up here, and the applicant will get an opportunity to respond to that later on. But just so for everyone's information, some of those things are property value on existing structures. So that's a consideration that we take into account. The effect on health, safety, and general welfare of the community, that's something that we consider whenever we're making a decision. And the last one, although it's not the last one, there's several more, but another one that was brought up was the historic significance of the site and the affected structure. So these are things that we consider whenever an application comes before us on a special permit, which is what this is in a sense. So with that, if there's anybody else who'd like to testify in opposition to the application at this time.
Hi, my name is Nathan Wright. I live at 1070 Marion Avenue, not in the vicinity of this plan. And I just wanted to say a couple things. First, I definitely appreciate the developer's interest in helping with the open spaces here in the town. I think that that's important, and I think that really the town, we need to work together with private individuals in order to preserve more open space. However, I also was thinking during the presentation about the PowerPoint that I believe it was a member of the town council put forward, as well as a lot of the information that was circulated, much of which was by local politicians who were trying to persuade folks one way or the other on the previous referendum. And that had me thinking about really what I think you guys are doing right now, which is a great job trying to explain to the layperson what it is that you're actually looking at here and what some of your thought process is. But my recollection of that presentation was that the numbers in there were proving a point that any development is a losing money proposition for the town. And based on that, the town voted for purchasing the land rights at the country club. And if that is really true, if those numbers in that PowerPoint presentation put forward by the town politicians are true, then we really need to look at what we're doing and to encourage development in this town, and what we're doing to maybe make things more of a cost-effective basis, if that makes sense. In addition to that, some of the things that I saw were a former, I think, party chair stating that definitively that building would have necessitated the building of a new school. I saw other elected politicians like echoing that. I saw the number of the impact of what that development would have upon our town kind of grow and grow and grow. And I don't know whether any of those numbers are true, but I do feel like the planning and zoning is part the zoning piece. And I get the fact that there's, folks purchase property and folks put permits in under a different set of rules, but part of planning and zoning is also the planning piece. And so I do urge you to do some work to research what the actual cost to the town is of different developments, and to put forward what those answers are that you're finding, and to enact it accordingly by revising or not revising different pieces of the zoning legislation. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Nathan. Any other member of the community would like to testify in opposition?
Good evening. I'm Scott Parmalee. I'm at 20 Amber Lane. And if I understood the history of the Churchill Street neighborhood, it sounds like I benefited greatly from the extension of Churchill Street into Brothers Way, into Lady Slipper, into Princess Pine Path, into Amber Lane. And perhaps as the neighborhood was growing, many people who were very concerned saw that their home values probably weren't adversely impacted by the extension, and a neighborhood that started small just became a bigger, better neighborhood. And I would hope that ultimately, if that's what happens here, that's what would happen. My question, and actually I want to say about Mark Lovely, about 11 years ago when I moved here, I was going to go to one of his properties. My wife and I put a deposit down, and we ultimately backed out. And my recollection was he refunded a non-refundable deposit. So I don't really necessarily have any concerns about working with Mr. Lovely. I did want to ask the question, though, regarding the street light that could potentially, at what point does a traffic light, it sounds like everybody here shares this deep concern, as I do. I have 2 school-age kids. I wait in traffic. I see the cars going too fast. Sometimes it's actually me, and I have to pump the brakes and remind myself I live here. Don't be a hypocrite. At what point does a traffic light become necessitated? People here might even want one now. But if 30 plus houses come to the neighborhood, would a traffic light?
Scott,
how would that work?
That's something that's determined by the police department. So they have a traffic division that would determine whether a stoplight, or they set the speed limit, and they set the if there was a traffic light that was necessitated on West Street. Traffic lights, because it's a state-owned and maintained street, that street, any traffic light or stop sign there or any speed limit is set by the State Traffic Administration.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep. That's it, Scott. You made me look smart, so.
I brought these papers to look like I had my stuff together.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you coming out.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Buckley, 109 Churchill Street. So I live 2 houses down from the Cannellans, who spoke previously. So probably the 6th or 7th house in from West Street. Just to further the statement that was previously made, I feel like, when it gets back to the traffic situation, we're in almost like a death by 1,000 cuts sort of situation with that. And I don't think it's the scope of the traffic study that they need to do to really look at the holistic impacts of that area. I've only been in that area 10 years, not 30, but I recall, I think it was back in 2012, there might have been a West Street corridor review. I don't know if it was by this commission or not. And if there's a traffic study done to look at, hey, is the impact between 33 and 36 houses really going to be impactful? I think that's missing the point. If you look at the 100 or so additional homes that have been built to the north, the other homes that will eventually be built just north of this development, the properties that are for sale off of West Queen Street and other things, you see the for sale signs for, undeveloped property along West Street. Is it time to, or is it the scope of this commission to take a look at revisiting, you could call the police department or the traffic commission and they say, oh, today in this one residential intersection, maybe you don't need a traffic light, but I wouldn't want to be, Monday morning quarterbacking a situation where there'd be a fatal accident or something else that happens. I mean, every couple of months, you guys are closer to the street than I am, but you can hear it, you hear the sirens, and you kind of just wonder, hey, is that the one? And I think a broader look at a traffic study would be a little bit more meaningful than just looking at, okay, we did a traffic study for this development, now we're doing it for here, we're doing it for here, and maybe that may give us some a little more comfort or some better results.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why we asked for a traffic study and not to try to speak for Sue Locke, she's certainly capable of doing that for herself, is that we over the course of time have had a very public concern about the traffic on West Street. There currently is an active study going on that's funded by the state of Connecticut, actually, on that roadway between Southington and into the Bristol area. And that's part of the reason why. But again, that road is controlled by the State Traffic Administration. We've made recommendations to the Traffic Administration for certain things like right turn only lanes, and they've overruled that. They have the power to do it, and we can only make a recommendation.
Well, I'm hearing that, so the town of Southington can only do so much. It's ultimately up to the state DOT to make that final decision?
On West Street, that's correct,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So at this time, and I apologize to anybody else who would like to testify, it's now 10 after 9. I have another, what seems like it's going to be one that's going to be very active or robust with the amount of people who come in, and we don't cut off people in terms of the time limit when they testify. This public hearing is going to remain open for all the reasons that I talked about earlier. We requested a traffic study, and we've requested the opportunity to go out and walk the site. So at this time, I think that unless there's an objection from a member of the commission, we'll suspend the public hearing on this one. Again, the public hearing remains open. We're not taking any action on this application this evening. And our next meeting is on September 7th. And anybody who didn't get an opportunity to testify will have the opportunity to come back then. But I too want to be considerate, and just to sort of explain my thought process, I want to be considerate of the other people that are here that have either applications or things that they would like to provide input on us on. And I thank everybody for coming out on this application. And if you have the opportunity to come out on the 7th, I encourage you to do that as well. So is there any objection from any member of the commission to that?
Just a point, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Salker.
After the people that were talking in opposition, when that was completed, on September 7th, if we continue that, Mr. Lovely will have a time to rebut. We'll hopefully be able to answer a lot of those questions that you might have and that we will have, but he will be able to hopefully answer or respond. So on the 7th, Mr. Lovely will probably, he's been taking notes, I'm sure, will respond to a lot of the questions that you have already raised, and that will probably be raised again on September 7th. So it's not just, it doesn't end here. So we will be getting some feedback from Mr. Lovely on September 7th as well.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that, Bob. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to take a 5-minute break to give people the opportunity to stretch their legs, maybe use the facilities. Let's reconvene back here at 9:15, please.
I know, I was about to ask. I was like, I drank half this coffee.
I just want
Good Lord.
to get that out.
Yeah.
Call the meeting back to order again. Dave, just a point of clarification procedurally, do we need a motion to table that last public hearing? Okay. Can I get a motion to table item 7D?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we table item 17.
A motion for Commissioner Salka. Do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner.
Commissioner Albanese is a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to 7E, and with that, I'll reseat Commissioner Gork. And 7E is a petition of the Southington Planning and Zoning Commission to enact a zoning regulation amendment of text to create a new section 11-24 of the zoning regulations regarding recreational cannabis marijuana, zone amendment 611. Dave, you want to talk about this, or you want me to talk about it before we open it up to public?
I would say go with it.
Okay, so I'll explain a little bit of what brought this about is just to sort of frame the issue a little bit. As I think most people know by now, the state legislature passed a public act, I think it's Public Act 21-1, which allowed for the recreational use of marijuana in the state of Connecticut. Part of that public act also put it down to the 169 towns of the state of Connecticut to set up zoning regulations on whether they wanted to have or allow recreational dispensaries in town, and a whole other set of things that the town has the opportunity, or I would say the obligation to weigh in on. We had a discussion, as I think most people know, at the last P&Z meeting on July 20th. And at that meeting, there was a sort of informal straw poll taken of our members that indicated that there's overwhelming support to provide a regulation that prohibits the sale of recreational marijuana in the town of Southington. I asked Dave and our legal counsel to work on drafting a text amendment to that effect. They did that. They presented that and filed that, I think I want to say, in August 3rd or somewhere around there, Dave. I think it was filed.
August 2nd, yeah.
August 2nd. So that language has been filed and is a matter of public record. And right now, we have a 30-day requirement that allows the Council of Governments that we are involved in to weigh back in or to provide their input on any zone text amendment. We are within that 30-day window right now, so we're not going to be acting on that, but I did want to have a public hearing so that when we come outside of that, and we have heard from all three Council of Governments at this point, but when we do come out of that 30-day requirement, which is on or about our next meeting date, which is set for September 7th at this point, the day after Labor Day, we will have the opportunity to act on that proposed zone text amendment. Just like all zone text amendments, we open it up for public input, both for and against what we have drafted. So with that, I will open it up, and rather than do a for and against, why don't we just do a general open to folks? I want to remind folks too that it's now 25 after 9. We have to be done by 12 o'clock, and I have a whole set of things on the business meeting, so a little bit of clock management is going to occur on my behalf. We do not, by my own rule, we do not limit the amount of time that people take, but I would ask that you be considerate of not just the people sitting up here volunteering in time, but also the people in the audience who might like to speak also. I will too try to frame the issue here. We are talking about allowing or prohibiting, in our case, the language reads that we would prohibit the sale of cultivation or farming or production, I should say, of recreational or marijuana for recreational purposes in the town of Connecticut. This has nothing to do with whether marijuana is beneficial or not beneficial. That argument is one that occurs in the General Assembly. They've had that conversation already. We're not here to weigh in on that. We are here to speak about whether we want to have a or a dispensary in our town that provides the sale of recreational marijuana. We do allow the sale of medical marijuana in the town of Southington. It's in a very small part of our town, but we do allow that. And I too would yes, we do. No, 11-23, I think it is, but correct. There is no actual business, but it is permitted in our town. The other thing I'll say is that this has nothing to do with the effort to have a referendum. That's on a separate track. As I said at our meeting on July 20th, if that goes forward, we're obligated to adhere to whatever the outcome of that referendum is. We have an obligation as a planning and zoning commission in this town to look at what we want to do, and that's what we're obligated to do. So we're looking at that as we're obligated to do, and with that, I'll open it up to public comment, please. Again, just start off with your name and address.
My name is Aaron Wade. I live at 39 Madeline Lane. And I want to apologize. I actually typed up word for word what I'm going to say, so I'm going to minimize eye contact to get through this quickly.
Go ahead,
just
Aaron.
wanted to let you know. So I would like to discuss the plan to block Southington from using its one marijuana dispensary license allowed by the state. The 2 points of opposition I have heard concern people getting high in the dispensaries and our children getting marijuana that they would not previously have had access to. First, marijuana dispensaries in some ways are very similar to liquor stores. How many people do you see walk into a liquor store and then come out intoxicated? The answer is obviously none, because people do not consume alcohol inside the stores. People do not consume cannabis inside dispensaries either. Residents are concerned about keeping our children from accessing cannabis. I would assume the same holds true for alcohol, but I have heard no concerns over the fact Southington is at its legal limit for liquor stores as allowed by the state. The cost to open a dispensary starts with licensing fees, which will run $55,500. On top of that, a store will have to either be built or extensively remodeled, staffed with trained staff, and stocked with expensive inventory. The cost of starting up a dispensary will be immense. It will be so immense that it would preclude any dispensary owner from willingly risking a sunk fortune in upfront costs and extremely high revenue to sell a few $100s of marijuana to our kids. And speaking of revenue, a 2017 Statista.com analysis surmised that dispensaries each average about $3 million in annual revenue. The 3% tax would bring an additional $90,000 into Southington. That statistic was from 2017. The industry and customer base has only grown in the meantime, likely resulting in a well-placed Southington store having higher revenue and therefore more taxes to us. Those additional tax dollars will come in handy to help offset the next tax hike we will hit shortly, since the town council did not fully fund the school district's financial obligations for this year through local taxes, opting instead to use one-time federal dollars. In choosing not to appropriately fund our schools, the town will be forced to raise our taxes or make cuts to our children's education, which again, any taxes on sales would help. I went to a dispensary in Massachusetts not too long ago. Of the 20 or so cars in line, there were at least a dozen with Connecticut plates. If residents of our state are willing to drive all the way to Massachusetts to obtain cannabis, don't you think they'd be willing to drive to Meriden or any of the other nearby towns? If people in our area are going to buy it anyway, why not keep the tax dollars in Southington? Additionally, it's one more business which will employ more people who will shop at the local gas stations, restaurants, and convenience stores. As the Planning and Zoning Commission, wouldn't you be able to dictate where in town the store could go? You must be aware of at least one retail location in town that has long been vacant with adequate parking and access. One such place that comes to my mind is the old Rite Aid on Queen Street. It's been empty for quite some time, has a decent amount of parking, and is directly across from the on and off ramps for 84, which would be attractive to locals as well as commuters for its quick interstate access. It even has its own light to minimize the impact on traffic. Blocking a dispensary from opening will not change the amount of cannabis in our community. When else have we been given the opportunity to open a store where our town gets to keep 3% of the sales? Why wouldn't we try to take advantage and make the most out of this for our town? Legal adult recreational use marijuana is coming to Connecticut. Nothing this town is going to do will stop that. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Any questions of members of the commission? Seeing none, can we have anyone else to testify?
Pam, you're popular today.
Hello, Pamela J. DiPaolo, 54 Delahunty Drive. Unfortunately, I get to see a different side of what people do after they consume alcohol, because I have my business on Center Street at DiPaolo Furniture, and I'm there 60 to 70 hours a week. And the increased number of bars that has happened down there, and also around the town, not only in my own business neighborhood, but throughout town, I have seen people who are adults and who are drinking legally, and then what they do is at night, after hours like 10 o'clock, 11 at night, when the bars are still open, they come down in front of my store and they put their liquor bottles, and they're on the street drinking, and then they leave the bottles in front of my store and on the sidewalk, and there's broken glass, and there's all kinds of incidents that I've seen happen because people are out of control of their drinking. And this is this situation with cannabis. Now, yes, it's true that people can buy it elsewhere. They can go to Meriden or wherever they want to go, or other municipalities which have their own decision-making to do. But Southington is my town. I've lived here for many, many years. This is where I was born and raised, and my business has been here for 96 years. And I have seen the bad side of society and the bad side of things when people are vaping in front of my store and up and down Center Street and around town. But the center of town, of course, is a draw. It brings people from all over. So what's going to happen is, you're going to have people from other areas maybe that will bring marijuana in and start smoking. And now I have to chase people outside of my front door who do smoke in front of my store. I say, please, could you please stand on the sidewalk? My property's here, but there's the sidewalk there. And then I have the police department who has responded very efficiently to us. Many, I don't know, at least twice a month, I have to have them down. And I'll say, look, you have these people drinking on the street. Can you please patrol the street better? And I've talked with Vicky Triano numerous times about making maybe an ordinance about having people not being able to smoke so much, because they'll go into the bars and they'll drink and then they'll come out with their bottle if they can get away with it, and they'll have the smoking, and then they're smoking and drinking on the street. So now you're going to add cannabis to all this, and you're going to have people who are going to be drunk and smoking too much, and maybe they're going to be high on marijuana. I don't know. I've never smoked it myself. So, but that's what I foresee, because I have to look at it every day in front of my business. And this is Southington, and it's kind of embarrassing for me to come in on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning and see all of these bottles strewn, and not all over my property, in the back of my property on Liberty Place and across the street and where my trucks are parked, and at my 39 Center Street location and my 83 Center Street location. And so I know firsthand, and I have proof. Mark Schota can show you the pictures that I have emailed to him, the photos, and the police department, and I've talked to Jack Daly and I've talked to Bill Palmieri about this. So it's not just this lofty ideal of cannabis helping out to be some sort of a financial asset to the town. It is not going to be that, I can assure you. And I would ask you that there's no possible benefit to the town other than maybe some small financial benefit, which is totally outweighed by the negatives that would occur if you let this go through. It will stretch the town's efforts to control the abuse. There will be abuse of this, just as there is with alcohol. And on the street, people leaving the bottles, as I said. This will compound and exacerbate those existing problems as it is. And so I am absolutely opposed to this. And I've done a lot of reading about it on other states, such as Colorado, where it has not been very successful. And there are good arguments, pro and con. But I, as a longtime property owner and business owner, I see the negative effects of adults who are drinking and acting very badly after they have been drinking and smoking, and also carrying on in the street with terrible, behavior as well. So this is certainly not going to be something that if someone is smoking marijuana, drinking and smoking, that's not going to improve their behavior any. And I'm sure that you all can understand that. So please vote this down, please. I just want to be able to say that Southington does not have, there's already medicinal cannabis. That I can understand that. That's perfectly understandable. But recreational, no. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela.
Mr. Chair, I have a point of clarification. I just want to clarify that we don't have any control over where people will consume cannabis. It's going to be legal in the state regardless, unfortunately. But whereas with the alcohol consumption that you're seeing, which is highly illegal, I completely disagree. Like, I do not think that that's right that you're finding bottles in front of your business. But however, marijuana doesn't have that same footprint. So I would just caution that the decision we're here to make tonight is if a dispensary can open, right? Either way, it's possible that the situations that you just described may continue and may compound because regardless, it's going to be legal. And I just want that on the record so that if there is an issue, right, in about a year or so, that we have spoken about it at this commission, right, that there are areas in town that people are consuming cannabis because the regulation that we have before us that we're discussing does not say where in town, just that where in town you can consume it, et cetera. The state is still going to say that it's legal. So what you're saying is I wish that we could help with that. But unfortunately, as we see it right now, we're saying no dispensaries. You know, we're not saying you can consume it here because a dispensary is right there and that's the only place in town. You know what I mean? We don't have that ability. But and I can assure you also, though, that it's not going to leave the same footprint as the bottles on your business, on the sidewalk, et cetera, because it's more of an invisible kind of drug in that sense, right? Alcohol so visibly affects someone. Someone can be intoxicated with marijuana and you may not even know it unless there's a smell to it or something. And at that point, that's another discussion. But I just want to clarify what we're here for tonight in that regard, you know, and I do feel you.
If someone has access to it from a local dealer, it is easy for them to go to a recreational area such as a restaurant downtown, which is where they're going with alcohol and not necessarily buying it in the restaurant next door or down the street. So that's what the problem is that they potentially may be buying it from this dispensary. And then as they're coming downtown to go into a bar, they're going to say, well, hey, let's have a smoke of marijuana at the same time as we're going outside and we're going to have a drink with it. So those things all come together for people who are recreational. They're going to say, well, let's have a drink and a smoke and we're going to be in this bar or we're going to be in downtown Southington and we're going to do all three things now instead of just two. That's what I'm afraid of, and I know that it's going to happen, and I'll prove it to you because when this goes through, I'm going to take some photos, and I'm going to get some video, and I'm going to get proof, and I'll present it to the police department and the town council, and I will prove you wrong. Thank you.
Well, I'm saying that yes, that is going to happen because marijuana is going to be legal in the state. So
Abused.
And you're not wrong, just like alcohol. So that's all I was saying to you, and I agree with you that it's an issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let's maintain a level of decorum here, please. I don't want to get into and I understand that some people are emotional about it, and I certainly understand if it affects your livelihood that probably adds to it. I do not want somebody to point a finger at anybody up here and say, you know, you. It's not about that. This is a commission decision that we'll ultimately end up making, but we're going to do this in as respectful manner as possible. Commissioner Rourke.
I had a while back, Caleb had sent the 4-page, I guess, summary of basically the law and what it entails. And I don't know if Dave can confirm this, but it basically states that anywhere you can't smoke tobacco, such as public sidewalks and parks and beaches, that will apply to cannabis as well?
Not specifically for town parks, as I understand it.
But not for town parks?
Right, it's state parks.
Okay.
But that's an individual decision. I don't know if our attorney had looked into that at all.
Okay.
But currently, my understanding is it's not on equal footing to regulate that use of specifically where.
Okay, because it just in this quick, I'll read it quick. It says property that a municipality controls includes but not limited to sidewalks, parks, beaches, municipal land, and buildings. And it states that the regulatory authority applies to smoked or vaped tobacco or cannabis and other types of cannabis use or consumption. So I don't know if that's something you would have to enforce further, or basically if it covers tobacco, it covers
any location is not a preview of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
That's left up. Any ordinance that gets, but we deal with regulations. Any ordinance that gets passed is something that the town council in our town would address.
Right, it's a municipal ordinance, as the chairman said. I just looked at the cannabis summary from NVCOG, and it did say that it's an enactment or amendment to a municipal ordinance prohibiting such activity in public spaces. So it would rise to that level.
Okay, so if the council decided to pass further to regulate on the sidewalks on public sidewalks, that would help out some situations, I guess.
That's up to them, yes. Hi.
My name is Mitch Silverberg. I live at 858 Pleasant Street, just down from the high school. We're new to town. My wife and I only moved here a little less than 2 years ago. We came here because we heard it was a nice place to live. I grew up in Southern Connecticut, West Haven, and you know, there's always been drug problems and marijuana problems in this state. Anybody who thinks this is new really isn't clear on what's been going on. I want to clarify one thing. I heard somebody talking about the tax benefit of this. Pam mentioned Colorado. If we look at the first 5 states to pass the regulations allowing for it, no state has benefited from money from taxes. They found out that the law enforcement that they had to use to back up their laws on legal marijuana and the use thereof was eating up that money as fast as they could generate that money. You can go online and check it. It's a fact. It does not give a major tax benefit to anybody. Tolling highways might, but that won't. So that's my first thing. The second thing is I am a retired teacher, 40 years in school systems in New York State. Kids are going to get marijuana, whether it's dispensed at a dispensary or it's sold on the street. If they want it, they'll get it. That's not ever going to solve that problem. That can only be solved through education and other ways of getting them to understand what it does to the person. You are affected by marijuana, and it does cause various different, things that that are not good. You cannot drive a vehicle while on marijuana. It's worse than driving drunk. The statistics are out there on that too, if you want to check them. So I'm very proud of you that you decided to say no dispensary. I think it's great you did that, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. Anyone else like to testify on this?
Richard Cooper, 79 Barbara Lane. So those who have said that this is not about a tax are correct. Life is hard. I'm not sure that you can really make a distinction between recreational marijuana and medical use of marijuana. Just want to state very clearly for the record, I don't think anyone who wants a marijuana store in town or supports, just the option wants kids to use it. I have not heard a single person say that. I would go on the record and say, yeah, don't use marijuana if your brain is still developing. That's bad. Unless, of course, you have a medical condition and your doctor recommends it. I just want to state for the record, I'm personally insulted to keep hearing people say that we have a medical dispensary. We don't. We don't. Maybe you're talking about the store that sells CBD. It's not a dispensary.
That was not what was said, Richard. What was said is that we allow medical marijuana dispensaries in town. It was not suggested nor said that we have one.
We also approved one, which was approved on Nodder Drive, which is one of the locations that it is allowed in town. And that particular facility did not get approval from the state. But this commission did indeed approve that. When it went for the next step for the state, it wasn't there. So that's that. We were referencing that.
So for the record, does that mean that theoretically a medical dispensary could be open in town?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
I'm still going to go ahead and do this anyway. I know it's been a long night, but this is not about tax money. This is about you voting no to allowing a store to open. And I really don't care all that much, but let me tell you what you're really doing. You're making sick people who are suffering go an extra mile, spend that extra money on gas, spend that extra time to go to Bristol, Meriden, Hartford, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and read a list of conditions that qualify medical marijuana use for adults. Cancer, glaucoma, positive status for human HIV, Parkinson's disease.
Hey, Richard, in the interest of time, and as I said before this public hearing started, I have a whole list of items that need to be done. This is not about medical marijuana. This is about whether we want to allow a dispensary in the town of Southington to sell recreational marijuana. Please keep your comments to the topic at hand. Please.
The distinction that you're making is false. I hope you all lose sleep tonight if you vote against a marijuana store in town. You're making people suffer needlessly. Needlessly.
You all set? Thank you. Anyone else like to testify? Stacy.
Don't worry, mine's short and sweet.
Always, Stacy. You always do a good job.
So my name is Stacy Dolan. I am at 1614 Meriden Avenue. And first, let me start off by saying you guys don't have to worry. My petition for referendum will not go through. Unfortunately, I realized that I wasn't going to spend my summer trying to force people to sign a petition to give them a voice. Even though I have to say, I would say 99% of the people I hit up wanted to sign the petition. It was really great. I will continue it for 2022, but I have family issues. My ex-husband's dying, so I'm dealing with that right now, and that's where I need to be with my son. So putting that on hold for a while. So nobody has to rush and worry about that. So do whatever you're going to do. The thing that I am up here to say, though, is that, as Mrs. DiPaolo was saying, a lot of people are confusing the fact that if there's no dispensary, there's no marijuana. And we know that's not true. And I don't understand the argument of not wanting a dispensary. People say, save the kids, save the kids. Kids are not even allowed in the dispensary. Kids are allowed in a package store. I mean, I see that all the time. I live on Meriden Ave. There's Sassy Liquors right next door. In dispensary, kids are not allowed. So when people are screaming, save the kids, what are you saving them from? A building they're going to drive by? And it kind of upset me in the last meeting here when Mr. Salka was still upset about VIP. What did VIP do to you? I mean, it's a great store in our town. I mean, it's a great tax money. I mean, when we were in COVID, it stayed open. I don't understand why everybody's upset about sex toys, and you can't even see them. So that's why I guess a dispensary, it's not bringing drugs to our town. We're forcing people to do them. It's selling them because it's illegal, and nobody new is going to do it. So I just don't understand why saying no to something that is giving us tax money. So there's that. And I think that's it. So thank you. And I appreciate everything you guys always do. I respect you, even if I disagree with you.
Hey, Stacy and Peter, I'll turn to you in a second. I mean, first of all, my condolences to you and to the family. I mean, obviously that's a sad situation, and I commend you for doing all the things that you do.
I'm trying to keep it together because it's talking about it.
I get it. And I, for one, as one of the 43,261 people, as the census numbers just released earlier this week, indicated live in the town of Southington, I, for one, appreciate your efforts and your involvement. I think that through involvement, through people like you and people up here and anyone for that matter, Councilwoman Triano, all the people on the county, I mean, the list, but I think that only makes us a stronger community. And I think that by the diversity of those opinions and those voices, we come to a consensus, hopefully that, doesn't mean we always have to agree, but we do it in a respectful manner.
Agreed.
And I, while I don't support the referendum because I have my own opinion, but I certainly respect that the work that you did and all that. And I just want to say thank you from me to you for all of that. And I hope that you continue to be engaged in what's going on in our town as well.
Thank you very much.
Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo the chair's sentiment, Stacy, but I would like your opinion on something.
Sure.
Because the regulation text change that we have before us is very comprehensive.
Right.
In regards to not just a dispensary retail storefront, but cultivation, farming, manufacturing, essentially the whole supply chain.
Right.
So I guess my question is your feeling the same about all those things, whatever it is, about all those things, which could indeed change the footprint of Southington?
Right.
Or is it simply for a dispensary? Do you feel the same about all those things, some of those things? What's your opinion on that?
All those things. I think it brings in a whole new level of jobs. And I think that's great for our state. And I had to say, I thought it was great when you were talking about the lovely development that you guys wanted to go out there and see the land. I don't want to bring this up again, but I thought it was funny. I don't know if any of you have ever been in a dispensary. Maybe one or two of you, but I could say, I'm going to make my mommy proud right now. I've been into several. And I could tell you that when I go up to Massachusetts, I come straight home. I don't peruse their parks. I don't go in the restaurants. I want to come home and party with my friends. I'm not going to lie. I don't smoke it on their streets. I don't even open a bag. I hide it in my trunk because I have to drive back to Connecticut. Now I don't have to, but I used to. Meaning I had to hide it before. I don't have to hide it now. Nobody's going to hang out here. Nobody's going to even give our tax money to our restaurants. They are going to go to our dispensary and go back home. No one's going to walk in front of DePaulo's Furniture to smoke a bone. That's not what happens. And unfortunately, with Mrs. DePaulo's store, it just happens to be on Center Street in the center of town where lots of bars are. I got nippers in front of my road like it's people's jobs to throw it there. I mean, unfortunately, I'll never find a joint. I wish. But yeah, so not the same, but I have to say though.
Biodegradable.
Exactly. But if you're going to want to walk Lovely's land that he's going to overdevelop, walk into a dispensary in Massachusetts and actually see what you're voting for and what you're voting against. Actually see it. Because if you've never been there, you have no idea what you're voting down, except for fear. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. Anyone else want to testify on this proposed text amendment?
I'm Nathan Wright, 1070 Marion Ave. It's a tough act to follow. Thank you, Stacy. But where I live on Marion Ave, you can kind of go out of my house and make a left and walk around the corner and see what many folks in this town are not sure what to refer to. Is it a food truck? Is it a restaurant? Is it both? I don't know. I mean, that's a question for debate. And you can look it up on the internet and see that they've got good relish, but you can't find any other facts about it. And my understanding from the last meeting was that a group was set up to kind of look into that issue and think about what really makes sense for our town? How can we appropriately help this business? How can we help the town? How can we make sure it's in a level playing field for everyone? There wasn't a rush. There's not a huge amount of money being generated. There's probably not a potential for a huge amount of money in a fixed food truck. But yet, the proper amount of thought is going into our town and how we can support this business owner and the other potentially competing businesses. I compare that to this rule where I feel like it was rushed. I don't know what the answers are. The gentleman said before, if you look at what happened in Colorado, I can Google on my computer, and granted, everyone gets different Google results based on your prior search history. We know all of that. But when I Google, the cost-benefit analysis of legalized marijuana in Colorado, I get a flood of stories that are positive. I'm sure I could Google instead the negative effects on a cost-benefit analysis of Colorado and get another string of results. And there's so much data that is out there, and it's frustrating to me that folks make decisions based on what they hear people say, or worse, what they read on Facebook, or what they think they heard someone say about what they read on Facebook. And there's information out there, there's projections on how much money these dispensaries could bring in. There's projections as to what the cost on a town can be. And I'd be curious to look at what the cost is on the town and what the cost would be without those dispensaries. Because, yes, there may be an elevated police presence, as the gentleman talked to about before, but that's going to be there, regardless. There's just a lot of unknowns about what we should do. And everyone that I've spoken to as part of the petition drive, some have been for it, some have been against it, others haven't known. But what they've all kind of had in common was this idea that we as a town should make sure that we're making the right decision, that we shouldn't rush into things. There's not a rush. I don't believe that you can even apply for a permit for another 6 months, if not a year. There's time that we can take to be thinking about how to do this right. And I know from the last meeting that you all can pass this resolution. You can continue to study the issue. If you decide that you are right, you can keep the resolution you had, but you can also pass a new resolution if it turns out that you're wrong. Marijuana, the support for it being decriminalized and legalized in this country, I think it's roughly 67% of the voting population believes it should be legalized. It only passed the 50% mark about 10 or 11 years ago. So it is an attitude that our voting population has that is very rapidly changing. Even amongst both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, for registered voters under the age of 50, there's majority support within both parties. And so one thing that we need to be doing is thinking about, like, how is it that society's views on marijuana are changing so rapidly? And am I still right in my beliefs that I learned from, Nancy Reagan of don't do drugs? Are those the right beliefs to hold? Or are these younger kids, do they know something that maybe, I don't know. Actually, I'm technically under 50, so I still fall into that demographic. But it won't be for long. And there are so many social issues going on right now. There's so much change going on right now. And I want to make sure that, like, when I moved to Southington and saw that it's a city of progress, I want to make sure that we are still progressing, that we're thoughtfully progressing, and that we're not just making a decision because we think we are like the white light up on the mountain that needs to say no and draw a firm line in the sand. I didn't choose to live in the town where, what's that movie, that Flashdance with Kevin Bacon? Like, that's not for me. I want to Footloose, there it is. Footloose with Kevin Bacon. I want to live somewhere where, as a community, we can thoughtfully be researching, look for like accurate research, and then use that to educate ourselves, to educate our community, to make decisions, and to help people understand not only why we make the decisions that we make, but the direction that we see our town going and how this decision impacts us on that road. And I don't see that here. I see the amount of thought that goes behind explaining the permit process for an individual development.
Nathan,
is great.
Could you please wrap it up? You're going off on sidebars that are down rabbit holes.
Am I though?
Yeah.
Okay, I will defer to your wise judgment as you can see what is in my mind. But thank you very much for your time. And again, I would appreciate some research on this area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to testify on this proposal?
He already spoke to it was Chairman.
Sorry, I just had a real.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, he's spoken once already, so let's.
Town council.
Yeah.
Always.
Hey, listen, thank you. I'm Victoria Triano, 33 Bellevue Ave. And I'm the chairwoman of the council. But I want to just come up today to thank you for really looking at all of this. And I do have concerns. I think that there are some assumptions that are being made that are not accurate. There was a statement made of how we slash the school budget or whatever. Actually, we increased the school budget by $300,000. That's another story. But in terms of the the recreational use of marijuana in Southington, I cannot come up with one reason why we would want to do it. There are other communities that are taking the progressive step to say, no, not in this town. We're not doing it here. We're a small state. You know, Stacy said she had to go all the way to Massachusetts, right, Stace? Well, now, Stace, you go to another town right across the border. It's not a big deal. The 3% sales tax, it will be completely outweighed. If you look at statistics, it's between 17 and 20% increase in emergency personnel hours, police, fire, all really focusing in on folks that are recreationally using marijuana and their communities and the heavy brunt of that weight. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate other people's opinion, but I do believe that we have responsibility on our individual boards to not only just think about, hey, where are we going now, but also to protect what we have. And Southington is in great shape financially. We are a town that can be proud mostly. I think most of us are proud to live in a town like Southington. And we really do not need recreational marijuana dispensaries in town. They will be in the cities. The governor's indicated that he's going to be looking at ways to increase the sale of recreational marijuana in the larger cities. So it's not going to be that far. Hartford's only 15, 20 minutes away. But I think for our community, I think that we should not have it recreationally in town. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to protect and to serve our community this way. So I thank you I know this has been a difficult subject, and even those people that are on the other side of the argument, it's been difficult for them also, but I appreciate all of your input. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman Triano. Any other comments? I'll let you speak. Please keep it brief. You know, I got all the people. I want you to turn around and look at them, because all those people who haven't spoken are waiting for us to act on applications that they have on an agenda. And I want to be considerate of them as well.
Okay. My question, real quick, was just to committee member Santago. Did I get that right?
Sure.
I'm sorry. Are you aware that there is a cultivation facility in Cheshire?
Yep.
Okay. So my only point was that they are out there, but they're very nondescript buildings. They don't advertise, so they can be in the communities with zero impact. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this proposed text amendment? Seeing none, does anyone on the commission see a reason to keep this open? Seeing none.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I do have a question about the regulation, and I'm just seeking some guidance from everyone. So the regulation that we have that does allow for medicinal dispensaries, I don't see this regulation talking about that one. Is it commonplace to not refer to the other regulation in this proposed one? Because I find that it's a little confusing. This lists almost everything. And hybrid, it lists everything that we talked about, but we do still allow for medicinal dispensaries. So I think the language is just a little confusing for me. I wonder if it may benefit to add something about the other regulation.
Dave?
Mr. Chairman, 1123, I believe it is the medical marijuana, and it does refer to the prohibition of recreational within it.
So I think I mentioned that at the last meeting,
Yeah.
that 1123, I think it is, does have a sentence in there that says that any, and I'm paraphrasing, but
Yeah.
any use beyond medical marijuana is prohibited.
Yeah.
And this immediately follows that, which references or at least clarifies,
Okay.
was intended to clarify. Peter?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, because I wrote that, or was part of that committee did it. So I think, Mr. Chair, I think you brought it up last time where there's a phrase in there regarding anything other than non-medical wouldn't be, and it referenced the statute that was in there regarding medical marijuana, referenced that statute. And as I understand it, that sentence can't apply here because that sentence doesn't mention the statute that just came. So because this will be in the same section of medical marijuana and references the statute that just got approved, it's in the correct section under medical marijuana as, for lack of a better word, a subsection. So all the things in medical marijuana would indeed still apply. And this would address the recreational thing, specifically addressing that statute. So, attorney, did I get that correct?
You did. In the proposed language, you specifically cited the Connecticut recreational marijuana statute, which is different than the Connecticut medical marijuana statute. So you have two totally different tracks.
Right. So it's still, we're on board with the medical one. All that stuff still applies. We're fine. This addresses the current statute that just got applied, which is why you have to mention it versus the other one mentions the medical one, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did that help?
It does. I just like, just looking at it, it's so brief and so final in its language that if a prospective business owner does come to our town and want a small business owner wants to come to our town and, I hope that they wouldn't see this and steer away from, but hopefully they'll read both, like one after the other,
medical,
like you
yeah.
just said.
Yeah.
So, cool.
I think in the intent, just to sort of explain my intent here on this too, is that
Okay.
I wanted to keep it brief.
Yeah.
With all due respect to the attorney in the room, or if there's any other attorney in the room, no disrespect.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to legalize the whole legalization or legalese of regulations. I think that's one of the things that Peter and the regulations group is trying to get away from. So we try to keep it very concise and brief, so
Yeah, I
I
appreciate
didn't want to have any ambiguity. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, no, I get it. Okay, cool.
All right.
Thanks.
Caleb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's something that Madam Chair had mentioned that I just kind of raise a flag all of a sudden. I didn't realize that there's an estimate that around 17% there will be an increase in costs. My concern is that that's going to be statewide. And so now it's here. So, I mean, if we're legalizing it statewide, it's going to be 17% across the state. I think that's where you're going with that. And I'm seeing your head nod. I guess that's right. So I guess my concern then is that if we can, in some way, at least mitigate that with the 3%, would that serve our community? And I just want to put that out there, and I appreciate you.
And Caleb, we're going to have this on the business agenda, so we'll be able to discuss certain points after listening to what the public weighed in on. I mean, it's just sort of digest that mentally and just figure out what we want to talk about back, again, two weeks from now or so. So this isn't the last bite at the apple for you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I think, and based on our population, we'd be allowed to have one facility. So I'm finding it that the tax savings and the money generated by one facility, I don't think is going to be a save-all for the town of Southington. I just find that we're having this discussion. I think it's great, but in the big picture, we're talking about one facility.
Yeah. Okay. Any objection to closing the public hearing at this time? Again, we'll be back in a couple of weeks and have a conversation on the business agenda about the actual regulation, and people can share their thoughts if they want to at that point too. So, okay, so we'll close the public hearing on that. Moving on to item 8A.
We did that.
Well, we didn't table the business meeting, but okay. Do we need to do another motion on that, Dave, or are we good?
I think you can close it and then we'll table it at the business meeting.
Oh, all right.
Say that again?
But we tabled it already.
We tabled the public hearing. Could I just get a motion to table item 8A?
Chairman, I'll make a motion that we table 8A.
I'll second. I just
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 8B, Amanda and Michael Dolphinaeus. Again, I apologize, but special permit application for a garage in excess of 3 spaces, property located at 361 Pratt Street in an R40 zone, SPU 654.
Mr. Chair, make a motion, we approve SPU 654.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Locks with a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Dave, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Gork,
Yes.
Commissioner Volpe,
yes.
Commissioner Olowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Locks,
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka,
Yes.
and Chair Hammersley.
Hammersley's a yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 8C, Arminis Coma Home Occupation Application to use premises as a phone service for residential garage door service company and to park van in driveway. All materials will be stored elsewhere or in van. Property located at 55 Longo Drive in an I2 zone, HO 79.
Mr. Chair, make a motion, we approve H079.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'd second it, but I'd like to also say that no other signage on the property.
Are you agreeable to that, Commissioner Salk?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just a discussion, in making a motion like that and with a second, basically, all of the things that were mentioned are part of the record about, and I'm just wondering, do we really need to include that in the motion? Just more of a point of
Well, it
order.
was mentioned that
It was
it
mentioned-
was on the van,
Right,
but we never talked about signage on the property.
okay.
I think it clarifies it and underscores that position.
Thank you.
And it's not unprecedented. I think, I drive by the one on Merida Waterbury Turnpike, the auto glass one that we did up there, God, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe. And I think we did a similar thing with that one where we didn't allow him to put a sign out in front of his yard.
Yep.
That's my recollection anyways, which could be wrong.
We have a great signing regulation already for uniformity, so I think that's a great idea.
We do. Commissioner Gore.
Just to follow up on Bob's point, we don't need to stipulate anything about material being stored elsewhere, just in the van, because that's already part of the record.
I think that's right.
I think it's in the regulation.
Yeah.
Dave, correct me if I'm wrong.
Mr. Chairman, it's belts and suspenders. If you want to add it, you can add it. It was a public hearing, so.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, but isn't there that in the home occupation regulation, it says that materials can't be stored on site? Visible? I'll pull it up.
With that visible section, they could have it in the van because it's, part of.
Yeah, we can't control what they put.
1 ton vehicle allowance for commercial vehicles. So, again, you could add it to.
It's just redundant.
Supplement what you're saying.
And the actual application states that it won't be
Right.
on site other than in the van or somewhere else.
Just making sure.
We have a memo in the file.
Good catch.
No, good catch.
Any further discussion on that?
No.
Dave, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Gork?
Yes.
Commissioner Volpe?
Yes.
Commissioner Walewski?
Yes.
Commissioner Locks?
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago?
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka?
Yes.
And Chair Hammersley.
Hammersley's a yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 8D, that public hearing is still open. Can I get a motion to table that?
Mr. Chair, make a motion, we table SPU 652.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Volpe with a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 8E, again, same thing. Could I get a motion to table that item?
Do we want to table it or continue the public hearing?
The public hearing's been closed.
If business meeting, you table.
Okay, we're not going to allow any more.
We're not allowed to vote, right, we're not allowed to vote on this
Okay,
today.
got
We're
it.
given a
Okay.
30-day requirement. Can we get a motion to table this?
Mr. Chair, make a motion now that we table ZA 611.
Second?
I'll second. What, Steve?
Commissioner Walowski with a second?
Like Jeopardy.
Any discussion? Family Feud. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 8F, Romano Parker and Associates applicant site plan application for a gas filling station and convenience store car detailing property located at 1608 Merida Waterbury Road, owned by Midstate Manufacturing in the B Zone, parcel size 1.37 acres, SPR 1818. This was tabled from July 20th. And Dave, I believe that the applicant still has some outstanding items.
Correct.
Can I get a motion to table this?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion, we table SPR 1818.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Santiago, share the wealth. And with a second, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 8G, Buck LLC, site plan application, construct a building and parking area for offices, storage, and warehousing, property located at 50 Mastriani Place in an I2 zone, SPR 1823. This was tabled from July 20th. The applicant is there.
Yes, for the record, Brian Panico, Harry Colin's son, here on behalf of Buck LLC. So I believe everybody's already seen this plan at the previous meeting. I'll be as brief as possible. This is an I2 zone. This is currently the location of a contractor storage, landscape supply, mulch yard. The applicant would like to build a mixed-use kind of contractor storage, rather, not so much mixed use. Offices above for those contractors and then storage for vehicles and stuff underneath. This site is particularly well suited for this, as there's about 14 to 18 feet of grade change from the street down to that lower section, making it ideal for them to be able to have the offices on the upper section and then be able to park things like triaxles that otherwise would normally have to be parked outside in I2 zones. Some of the changes that were made really were very minor. We added some, I believe it was guide rail end components, basically, so that the guide rail didn't just stop. It kind of curves into the site. We called out closing some curb cuts. We also corrected the zone. There was a zone change at one point, and so all of the property to the east is actually industrial as well, not residential, so that buffer was updated. At this time, I believe we've also met all of the town staff's comments. And so if there's any kind of further questions or there was any discussion that needed to be made about this, I'd be happy to answer those.
Is there any questions or comments from the commission members? Dave?
Just one point that I need clarified. I did have a comment about the mulch berm that was there. I believe it's, it's about 6 or 7 feet high, but it's around the existing base of the pine trees. I don't think that that's good for the health of the trees. If you want to keep that, seems like you're keeping that as the buffer in place of the 50-foot required buffer. So I don't disagree that it serves a purpose, but I think it's detrimental to the existing screening that's there. So if that could be pulled away from the trunks of the trees,
sure,
I think it'll go a long way, because you risk losing that visual buffer and just having that berm there. So.
Okay.
You're agreeable to that?
We are agreeable to that, yep.
Okay. One question I had to do with setbacks and buffer zones. The requirement for a buffer zone in an I2 zone, Dave, is what?
It is 50 feet. It can be waived by 2/3 vote of the commission.
So a supermajority would be required to waive that? What's your buffer proposed under this site plan?
So we do show a 50-foot buffer of any actual, so this kind of dark green area down in through here, that is the essentially the buffer. What we have basically done is just not, I'm sorry, I'm trying to see full screen here. What we've basically done is just not put any pavement, any parking, any building inside of that buffer. We've left it otherwise natural. I can go through here, and so this is, I'll go to the last page here. This is the existing site. So you can kind of see from here, this is where our building is, this is where our access aisle to the back there is. This is that existing row of trees at the very bottom. I know it's probably a little tough to see here, but everything else that's there right now is basically just kind of that torn up area where everything is being stored. So in our proposal, what we're basically doing is restoring that entire area with grass. It's not being completely replanted with anything. We look at it as a vast improvement, essentially, over having kind of nothing there, and the mulch yard and equipment and all that. So we are maintaining that 50-foot buffer. However, we're just not planting it with a million trees. It's more just being left brought back to grass in place of and keeping those very, very large pines that are growing there now.
Okay, and as I said not too long ago to an applicant who sought to reduce the buffer, it doesn't go with the person, it goes with the property. So my concern isn't necessarily with the current property owner. My concern is probably more with what we end up doing. So Dave, with regard to the buffer, is there a height requirement or any type of a planting requirement in there?
Within that specific section, it just says it has to be screened or a landscape border. Doesn't say what type of trees could be there, but you could also have a type of hybrid which you would line the 50-foot demarcation with boulders, so any future user wouldn't go within that area.
Yeah.
But that berm itself it's pretty impressive once you're out there in terms of screening. It's got to be 6 or 7 feet high.
I took a look. I drove out there earlier today. I was impressed, and I have no problem with the current owner of the property. I just am trying to look out into the future. So,
Sure.
20, 30, 2 days from now,
And I
who
think
knows?
actually, Dave, if you correct, so that being a buffer now, if somebody wanted to come back with a future application and actually build something in there or change that, they would have to come back before.
Yeah, it would be a site
Commission,
plan
correct?
modification. Now, they do reference evergreen species that shall be planted at least 5 feet in height. But those trees are 30, 40 feet in height, and they are pines, so they're, not extremely sturdy, but when they grow in clusters like that, it does provide some good noise attenuation and some visual because they're evergreens. So if there's any areas that you would think would be supplemented or leave it up to staff to see if there's any areas that need to be supplemented, they could probably.
And I think we've done that on previous plans in the past. And actually, we can probably put a note on there even to say in the event that one of those trees falls, or in the event that at the time of, kind of the zoning inspections and stuff, they determine that, it's not suitable, that additional plantings may be required by town staff. I think that's something that.
I just want to maintain it because it does abut a residential zone, and
Yeah.
I think the owner of this property lives in that residential zone now, if I'm correct. I think
believe
it's
so,
used
yeah.
as an office area, maybe. So it really doesn't matter to them as much as it might matter to somebody in the future.
Yeah.
So if you're agreeable to putting some stipulation in there like that, I personally would like to see that as part of a motion, but, that's not, I'm just one of 7 people, so. But I appreciate your flexibility and understanding on that, so. Any other further discussion from Commissioner?
The only other thing actually I meant to bring up, we would like to request a sidewalk waiver. Technically, this would need sidewalks along the frontage. There are no other sidewalks along Mastriani Place, and Rails to Trails is directly on the other side of Mastriani Place.
Right. Dave, does that need to be part of a formal application in order to do that?
If
or
they're
is it-
shown, are they shown on the current plan?
They're not.
All right, they typically should be shown on the plan, and then you request a waiver, typically. But again, that, you would be looking for the 2 waivers, the one to modify the screening, and then for the sidewalk waiver.
Those are 2 separate votes that we would need to take?
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate it. I mean, personally, I don't have a problem with that. I am a big proponent of sidewalks, but, I get that street doesn't have that, and it's really out of character with the street.
Yeah.
Which is really this business.
Yeah, and there's really not much left after this section of frontage.
Yeah. So,
Real quick, and
Caleb, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just coming off of what you just said about not much left on the street, but there is some land back there. What is that? 60 Mastriani Place is 4 acres.
That's for Mr. Chairman.
So there's still some meat on the bone back there to do something in the future. So as far as sidewalks is concerned, something to maybe consider long term.
Is that an I2 zone as well, Dave?
That's a current approved use. He could come in and build that tomorrow through a zoning permit for industrial storage on that 4-acre piece in the back. So that came back recently for an extension, so.
Did we give a sidewalk waiver on that?
It's at the end of the cul-de-sac, so I don't think it would have.
Oh, it never
been
even
an off-site
factored into it?
improvement.
Okay. Okay.
I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Any further discussion?
Well, if it helps, Mr. Chair, I don't know if it helps, but the trail's right there. If someone wanted to go down the street, they jump on the trail and walk down.
Yeah, it is literally right there. I mean, you walk across the street, it is there.
Yeah, that's,
Commissioner Santiago.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. In fact, that Best Charity Place street, whatever it is, isn't like it's a main thoroughfare or whatever. I think it's Canal. Is that Canal or Atwater? I forget. The street over
think
there.
that's Canal.
I mean, it runs parallel to that. So this is more of a, for lack of a better word, access road. So usually I'm like a hard no on any kind of sidewalk waiver, but in this particular case, I don't see a need for sidewalks here. So I'd be good with that.
Yeah.
Same.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, so just to clarify, we are looking for 3 separate motions, I believe. We're looking for 1, a sidewalk waiver, 2, a waiver on the buffer, and then 3, a motion to approve the application with any stipulations that we want to put in there along the lines of what Dave spoke about. But, so let's deal with the sidewalk waiver first, I guess. Do we have a motion to waive the sidewalk requirement?
I'll make a motion to waive the sidewalk requirement.
Okay, Commissioner Santiago made a motion. Is there a second? Commissioner Salka made seconded that motion. Is there any discussion on that? We need to call a roll because I need a supermajority on that. So Dave, if you can call the roll, please.
Commissioner Agoric,
Yes.
Commissioner Volpe,
Yes.
Commissioner Wowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Locks,
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka,
Yes.
and Chair Hammersley.
Hammersley's a yes. Motion passes 7-0. So now we'll move on to the motion to waive the buffer requirement.
I guess I
Dave,
don't understand.
do we really need, I'm thinking about it, do we really need a buffer waiver because they already
Your
have a 50-foot buffer there? Or can we just put a
It's
stipulation?
a modification because the requirement is landscaped, but I mean, essentially grass is landscaping, but it doesn't quite meet the spirit of it. So I think we'd be more comfortable with a modification instead of a waiver, which it allows you to do. It says requirements can be modified or waived.
Do we put the stipulation on moving the mulch away from the trees on this and replace any fallen damaged trees, or is that on the other application?
It would be applicable to both, but you could vote to modify, and then the approval letter would state the condition for, that you just mentioned.
So the language of the motion to modify the buffer requirement would read how?
Exactly what you just said. That's the motion. Modify the buffer requirement as shown on the plans, but to include boulders. So,
But to include boulders, okay.
yep. And you could throw in to move the mulch pile.
So the staff tells us that we need to have a motion to modify the buffer.
Yeah.
So do we have a motion to modify the buffer requirement?
I make a motion to modify the buffer requirement as well as move the mulch buffer away from the current trees.
And add boulders.
And add boulders.
Commissioner Gore
at the 50
made a motion to
Add boulders at the 50-foot buffer line.
Okay. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Commissioner Salka with a second. Is there any further discussion on this?
I applaud Commissioner Gore.
Took one for the team.
Yeah.
Seeing no further discussion, Dave, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Gore,
Yes.
Commissioner Volpe,
Yes.
Commissioner Walowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Locks,
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka,
Yes.
and Chair Hammersley.
Hammersley's a yes. Motion passes 7-0. Now we come to the final motion on this application, I think. Do we have a motion on the application?
Make a motion to approve SPR 1823.
We have a motion from Commissioner Salka. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Santiago. Is there any further discussion on this? This is in conformity with the previous motions that were passed.
Right.
Seeing no further discussion, Dave, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Agoric,
Yes.
Commissioner Volpe,
Yes.
Commissioner Walowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Locks,
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka,
Yes.
and Chair Hammersley.
Hammersley's a yes. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck to you. I hope you appreciate all the hard work we just did here.
Say that 3 times fast, Gord.
Okay, moving on to 8H.
They've been sitting there. I've been like, go. It's like, you don't even say.
Chris Provenance, CO, EBI Consulting, site plan application to construct a 7-Eleven convenience store building with gas station, gasoline pumps and canopy. Underground fuel storage tanks are proposed to facilitate the gasoline sales operation on site. The existing pharmacy building will be demolished to make room for the proposed development. Property located at 500 Queen Street, owned by RAP Properties LLC in a B zone, SPR 1825. Could I, before you start unpacking, could I just give you an option? This is going to be tabled. I've had several requests from members of the commission to table this application. It's 10:30. I give you the option of coming back on the 7th and presenting us with your plan and allowing us to table it now. Or if you'd like, you can present the plan now. And as I said, no action is going to be taken on this at the request of several members. And then you would have to come back again on the 7th anyways.
I would also add, Mr. Chair, that I know you got a lot of stuff there. Normal applications that we have, because we have this filmed and we have electronically, all applications are done electronically versus in print, because we get it on film so that the public can see this, because all this is filmed. So we usually ask applications to submit what they're going to show electronically so that it can be shared with the public. That can't be. So just to add to what the chair said.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that they did fly in for this, right? Did you fly in for this? Is there a representative here?
We have a couple folks from the Boston area.
Okay. So maybe it's.
I know VHB is a very high-powered engineering firm, so, I'm sure you've been through this rodeo before. I'll leave it up to y'all on what you want to do. Let's let you confer.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, when's the next hearing?
It's, I'm sorry, September 7th. It's the day after Labor Day, 7 o'clock, same place. Sorry?
Do you have any idea where we would be on the agenda?
Well, you're gonna occupy a space that's at least at 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th number under the business agenda at that time. And then we have public hearings. We have the one on if you were here for the West Street, that's still open. And then we have one other public hearing that remains open at this time, although I'm not sure whether they're going to be ready to go or not. So if I had a guess, and don't hold me to it, I would say you'd be probably in the 10 range.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, let's take a 5-minute break. I'll let you all talk, and these people will get a chance to stretch their legs and go to the restroom if they want to. And we'll come back in 5 minutes, and if you could just let me know. All right.
My eyeballs hurt. Too much screen time.
You're right. It's like frazzled.
Yes,
Then they don't have to present.
one of the things that so other commission members understand, one of the things that I did offer, if they were willing to forego presenting tonight, that we would make them the first item on the business agenda at our next meeting. So with that, it's up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, my name is Paul Vitaliano. I'm a civil engineer for VHB. We're here representing 7-Eleven. We'll accept your offer to table our application, come back next time. I would like to ask, Mr. Chairman, if there is any questions that you would want to ask at this time that we could be prepared to answer. I know you haven't heard anything, but if there's anything you'd like to say to us now, we'd be willing to listen.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and thank you for your flexibility, to you and the entire team and everybody who's stuck around for the last 3.5 hours roughly. Share the pain a little bit, but I appreciate that. One of the things that in talking to staff is that, for everyone's edification up here, and I shared it with you a little while ago, planning and engineering have not had an opportunity to look at this proposal enough to get comments to the applicant. So that's still outstanding, and that's presumably something that will happen in a relatively short period of time. They tend to get that stuff back to you. So when you come back on the 7th, it will be a more wholesome conversation. But with that, I'll open it up to commission members for any questions they might want to ask or what they've been able to review so far. Anybody?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Again, I appreciate your flexibility and your willingness to do that for us. With that, I'll ask for a table on item 8H.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we table SPR 1825.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Woloski with a second. Any conversation? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Have a great night. Item 8I, Pro Realty, request to post $15,000 bond in lieu of site plan compliance, 161 Canal Street, SPR 1805.
This item's ready for action, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, ready for action. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, make a motion we approve SPR 1805.
We approve the release of the bond on SPR 1805, right?
Yep.
Second?
Second.
Santiago with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 8G, Hillcrest Village, request to post $132,000 bond in lieu of site plan compliance, SPR 1485.
This item's ready for action as well. This would be to cover the cost of the full paving of the site. The developer is concerned about paving it now and having the heavy equipment still use it for the remainder of the houses that are to be built. So once you reach 75% build out, there's certain requirements that have to be met, but you can post a bond to cover those in the meantime. So
And it ensures the work will ultimately get done. And once the work is done, the bond gets released.
correct. Yep.
Right?
His concern was damage to the new pavement
Pavement
during
itself.
construction?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, make a motion to release the bond on SPR 1485.
It's to post the bond. I'm sorry, my mistake.
Post, yeah.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Santiago with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to administrative items. Anything there, Dave?
No, I think we covered everything. Thank you.
Okay. Item 10, we have a couple items scheduled for a public hearing. Look like it's pretty innocuous stuff. Yeah?
Subdivision.
I don't know.
Well, we have that, but these other items are new ones. What's behind the zone district boundary change, Dave?
That's interesting. It's almost like a little node of industrial in a residential area, and this little flag part that's sticking up, they want to, with an existing home on it, they want to bring it back to our 2025 from the I-1.
Okay. Any new applications?
We will be getting some, but not as of yet.
Okay. With that, anything else from commission members?
Sorry, Mary Ellen.
I told Mary Ellen, I joked with her, I said, I don't want Dave here, I want you to run the whole thing by yourself. Good job. You did a great job. With that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good job, y'all.
Getting them in.
They'll come in for it.
Got them in.
On here, it just says.
Yeah, you as well.
Dave, when is that meeting going to make that sidewalk?
No, they just say they will be scheduled and we'll put them on.
Oh, still attached.
To the right.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Have a great night too.
You too.
Are you away?
Will be.